Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the November 9th, 2022 East Whiteland Township Board meeting. If we can stand and give the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am Scott Lambert, and I'm joined on my right by Vice Chair Rich Orlow and our Solicitor Bernadette Kearney. And on my immediate left is Peter Fixler, Supervisor, and our Township Manager, John Nagel. We'll start off with board briefings. We had an executive session that was held on October 12th at 5 o'clock as we discussed real estate, personnel, and legal issues. Next up, John, if you wanted to discuss further, but this coming Friday is a very important day for veterans, Veterans Day 2022.
Scott, thank you. Generally, we make it a tradition to recognize the U.S. Veterans Affairs group in Washington. Each year they have a theme for Veterans Day. Okay. The theme is honor, and to further that, veterans are proud of their military service in defending our nation. Honor reflects the military value and tradition answering the call to duty. There is distinct honor in serving to protect our way of life and the Constitution of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, John. A little bit along those lines, I just wanted to mention that along with the veterans and what they've been able to provide for us is the opportunity to vote. Last night was election here, and just a couple interesting facts that I'll pass along to you is that East Whiteland Township has 6 different precincts, and we had a total of, not including mail-in ballots, of about 4,604 people went out to the polls and actually voted, and that's on a total township number of 8,886 who are listed to vote. So those are pretty interesting numbers. I'm also being told that when you count the mail-in ballots going forward, we might expect somewhere in the neighborhood between 60 to 65% of all people ended up participating in this year's elections, which is truly a great number. I've never seen it above 50, 52. So applaud everyone that was out there and voted, and everybody that helped out in the process as well. Next is a little bit of an update on the Route 30 corridor for myself and John. And one of the things that I will say is that the Route 30 corridor team ended up meeting last week with the Chester County Commissioners. We discussed with them the project in more detail. We discussed to them about funding sources and their support and going forward what we were going to do. We had positive feedback from all 3 commissioners. We are also going to be meeting with Senator Katie Muth, who was reelected, as she is now responsible for our area, and so we'll be talking with her next week and giving her an update as well on the project and reaching out to her for some support as well. And then I guess the third thing that I have is that, as you know, we received $3 million for road improvements along Route 30. And we're looking at different areas to utilize those funds prior to the next large project that occurs along Route 30. There may be some intersection improvements, there may be some slivers of turn signals or turn roads that we're looking at, or maybe even some traffic signals that we may be looking at to improve in the meantime, but we're in discussions with that. John, did I miss anything? I'm sure I did.
The only thing related to that is we've been working with Congresswoman Christy Houlihan's office, who also won re-election yesterday, and so we'll be increasing our work with her office to apply for the 2023 version of the RAISE grant, and so that work will begin in earnest sometime this month. We have one other item on the agenda. I won't get into that now. It'll be discussed under 3A, or I'm sorry, 3B.
Any questions? Public? All right, John, update on the sewer sale?
The only item on the sewer sale that's new, and we got contact about it today, is the appeal work is started, and Obermeyer, who represents the township in our sale, is going to be working with Aqua to prepare for the appeal. That work will be funded solely by Aqua and not by the township. So we should have more information for you at the December board meeting. That's it.
Okay.
For December, can you try to get a timeline, a typical timeline? I don't know if the court has issued a order yet on their timeline, so whatever we can get would be helpful.
And the only other thing related to that is I believe Rooney Ingersoll is handling the appeal.
I will, at this point, I'd like to amend 2A in the executive sessions. I forgot to mention that we had an executive session this evening. Thank you, Donna, for legal, personnel, and real estate issues beginning at 5:45 today. (2E), Jerry Gorski can give us and John a update on the campus master plan at this point in time. Keep everyone in the loop as to what we're doing and where we are on that project.
Thanks, Scott. These three items are kind of holding items for the agenda. Because of the sewer sale that's been appealed, we're kind of in a holding pattern, but we are working on work currently that is needed as far as design work. Nothing of great significance, and we're also working on some issues with this building here because the sale has delayed the police project by at least a year to year and a half. I think we need to come back to the board and come up with some recommendations for things we can do to keep this building operating going forward. So that's all I have this evening.
Thanks, John. Shager, if you can give us some updates on some police accommodations.
Yeah, so these are from September, and we have like 5 life-saving awards, and they are at least on the dates 9/12 and 9/13 were both hotels that were involved Narcan and CPR saves. On the 12th, it was Sergeant Delacruz and Officer Slider who received the awards, and the same shift the next day at another hotel right next to that one on the 13th was another Narcan save, and that was Officer Daniels and Officer Moran on that shift. And the final one, life-saving award, was on the 16th, which was 2 days later, and it was the same shift in Bob, and it was Officer Slider who had a cardiac arrest in a vehicle up around Plainbrook Road where the vehicle went off the road, had a couple of people in it, and it was a medical emergency. It turned out to be a cardiac arrest, and they used an AED at the scene and were able to get some type of heartbeat back, and the person eventually survived. EMS came and at the end and assisted. So those three, the life-saving awards go into their files, and they all read like this one: in recognition of your unselfish actions during an emergency on the dates which resulted in the saving of a human life. Your proper application of training, experience, and equipment exemplifies your dedication to duty, the preservation of life, and service to the community. So we thank those officers for their expertise in doing what they did and saved those lives. One other item of note is we have Officer Paige Warfel is now our newest community policing officer. So she's been taking over those tasks, and she attended a lemonade sale up on Woodlane during the month, and then on Halloween she attended a trunk or treat at Philadelphia Memorial Park, which turned out to be a big success. So she's getting her start fast.
Were we selling the lemonade?
No, we probably drank
Okay.
some, but
All
we
right,
didn't.
good. Okay, good.
I think it was one of the younger kids, like the Alex type lemonade things.
Chris, a lot of those life-saving maneuvers that you were talking about, are all the officers trained on those as a standard training protocol? Is there anything special?
Well, we train annually for the AED, CPR, and first aid. And then a Narcan, obviously we train, and we're outfitted with two shots of Narcan per officer. So some of these actually took more than one can of the Narcan. So it does, they save lives when they get there first. So that's how it works.
Okay, again, good job, everyone. Next, we'll move on to Donna. Anyone have any comments?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
I guess John and Usha, if you can bring us an update on the 2023 preliminary budget numbers.
Sure, Scott. I'll kick it off, and then Usha can fill in with the summary of the budget. We're very pleased with the budget presentation that was made to the board both days in October. We ended up with the recommendations this evening, where we have a net surplus recommended of over $1 million. We have a $16 million budget overall. I want to thank Usha, Joe Meehan, Donna Weicker, the department heads. We're very diligent about our budget here, and I think the department's heads take it and the finance department takes it very seriously, and it results in what you're going to hear this evening. That's really my comments at this point. I have a couple of things I'll be adding to, but Usha's going to carry the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Today we are here to welcome to our 2023 budget presentation. Next. Can go to next one. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at you. So these are the dates that are very important on our budget calendar. As John mentioned, we already met on October 18th to had workshop to discuss our general fund budget, and then again we met on October 25th to discuss our capital budget. November 9th, which is today, we are presenting our preliminary budget, and December 14th would be our final budget for board consideration and approval. This is the summary of our general fund revenue. As you see, for earned income tax, for 2023, we are budgeting 11.5 million versus 10.3 million in 2022, an increase of 11.7%. We are projecting this number based on three main factors. First of all, the unemployment rate has been historically low. The second, our major corporations such as Vanguard, Johnson & Johnson, they continue to add jobs. Last but not the least, Township enjoys a workforce of very high skilled and educated group of people, and that means high skill means better earning, that is translate into better earned income tax for us. So based on those three major factors, we are projecting 11.5 million. However, if you look at the history for last few years, we will probably exceed 11.5 million. So that's our projection for our income tax. Now, local service tax, we are budgeting 1.3 million versus 1.27, and a small increase of 2.4%, and that projection based on our current collection rates. Real estate transfer tax, we are projecting 750,000 versus 500, an increase, but however, our current analysis of our future projection shows that there are not many projects left to do in 2023, and our old project has been matured. So although we have been exceeding our budget for last few years, but we want to be conservative. And this number comes from Jack and his department. They keep very comprehensive report analysis. So if you ever need any more detail on that line item, we can always provide. Jack helped me, so he can provide you with that number, where that number coming from. Building permits, that's same. Again, we're not seeing many projects taking place in 2023. So based on our current projection, current market, I should say, we are keeping same number as last year. Real estate property taxes, same again with that. Although we are exceeding our budget every year, but we want to be conservative based on our current data. Other revenue, that comprise of many line items, such as state aids, all kind of grants, any kind of revenue due to fees collections. But you see jump 58% this year, that because we made, and also this line of revenue comprise of transfer from other funds. So as you are aware of, we are making we're recommending two transfer, one for 3 sewer employees that are going to be paid through general fund. So we are reimbursing ourselves from the sewer fund for those 3 employees' salary and benefit. And the second big item in this line is we are going to pay our debt, public debt, and we are reimbursing our general fund for that from the sewer fund. So that making our number jump to 58%. In total, we are budgeting 17.4 million in revenue versus almost 15 million last year, an increase of 16.3%. This chart is just to show you the percentage of total revenue by the sources, where they come from. As you can see, 60% of our total earning comes from earned income tax, followed by other, we just discussed, and then followed by local service taxes and property taxes, and for 4.7%, and then real estate transfer 4.3%, building permit 2.9%. This is our expenditure. You will get more detailed information in December, but I'm going to give you very high level. information at this point. As you see, administration, we are budgeting 2.2 million versus 2022, we had 2 million, an increase of 6.9. Actually, that's not an increase. If you look at planning and zoning, it's just kind of wash, because we just reclassing individual salary and benefit into administration, because that's where it should be. So that's not really increase. Fire and EMS, we are up by 8% compared to last year, and you board is aware of, because we added 3 new fire position in end of later in 2022. So, and also the increase also includes their raise per their contract. Police, we are going up by 8.7%, and there are 2 factors causing that variance. One, their annual raise per their contract, as well as we are asking for 1 new position and the salary and benefit related to that position. Public Works, you see big jump in Public Works, 25%, and as you're aware of, I just talked about, we are transferring 3 sewer employees into our Public Works. So that's related to that. Debt services, that's per our schedule, it's pretty flat. Recreation, again, that has 2 factors again. For that increase, we are requesting 1 full-time position and their salary and benefit, plus they are requesting for annual raise. In total, we are budgeting 16.3 million in 2023 versus 14.8 million in 2022, an increase of 10.4%. This slide shows the percentage of your total expenses. So you can see police department consumes most of our dollar, that is 41.9%, followed by fire, EMS, and courts, 21%. My glasses. And then public works 16%, and administration 13%, if I can see properly, I don't know. My glasses.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, thank you. So administration 13%, and then planning and zoning 3%, debt services 3.1%, and recreation 1.8%. So this is just a picture of our total expenses by the department. I'm not going to bore you with these written items, because that's what I just talked about when I was talking about our on income tax and all other taxes. So this is pretty much in writing what I just said when I went over our revenue title. Next one. Compensation, I already discussed about that, so I'm not going to go over. However, I will talk about medical insurance. For 2023, we are budgeting $1,477,000, and that includes 3% reduction due to multi-trust discount and 5% reduction in costs due to debit membership rewards, a total saving of 8% from the original price. When we met first time in October, that number was higher by 8%. So since then, we received a final number from David for all our insurance. So I went and factored those numbers in my original number. So for now, we are $1,477,000. Pension, board have already approved our pension for in September for 2023. It's a small increase from last year of 2%, and that is due to current payroll projection. Other post-employment benefit, that's for our retirees only. Last year we had budgeted this year we are budgeting $452K versus last year $431, an increase of 5% over last year. Overtime, all our department heads work very hard and do their due diligence to make sure their overtime stay within their budget limit. And because of their historical record, we think we are going to be somewhere where we were. So we are budgeting the same amount as we did last year, although we can always amend those numbers if needed. Information technology, we are a little bit higher than last year because there were a few requests from the police department, which you will see in a detailed data I have in this slide. However, one good news that all covered has committed to maintain rates in their service contract through 2023, and we will work to make sure we finalize our number for 2024. For vehicle and equipment replacement, we are budgeting $369K in 2023. Service debt, our only non-sewer debt is for the public work facility. The debt service for 2023 is $505,690. Our outstanding non-sewer debt is $6,760,000 as of December 2022. So, this might be very interesting to everybody because this is our surplus slide. So, as of September 2022, when we met first time in October, we projected $16.5 million in revenue and $16.1 million in expenses for net surplus of $459K for 2023 compared to a surplus of $208,000 in 2022. So we were already doing better, a lot better than 2022, but since then, we recommended two transfers that we just discussed, $442,000, $181,000 for 3 sewer employee salary and benefit, reimbursing ourselves from the sewer fund, as well as $506,690 for debt services related to the public works building. We are reimbursing ourselves from the sewer fund. We also, beside these two major revenue, we also recommended couple expense line item, which I already discussed. One position we are asking to add in police department, so their salary and benefit. Another request for park and rec, so expense related to their salary and benefit. After implementing all our recommended changes, the current bottom line is $1,111,532, an increase of $652,532 from the previous statement. This is pretty much our workforce as of 2022. We have 64 full-time employees, 3.96 part-time. In total, we have 68.9 employees, and that does not include elected officials. That's it. So next one. So I'm going to stop here. Before I stop, I just want to let you know that there are 41 pages in this, so if you need detail on any item I just talked about, you just have to go through. And if you still not satisfied, please send us email, and I'll provide you any detail you need, any evidence you need for the number that I mentioned here. Now, John, please.
Yeah, this is a good kind of segue for me, at least. There's one final comment that I want to make. These are the reserves that we have on our financial statements from the end of last year. They total about $23 million. Zach, if you can go to the next slide. This one's going to be really hard to read, but if you could blow it up as much as you can. Thank you. This is going to be, I think, probably the highest year of capital spending that we've had since I've been here, somewhere around $5 or $6 million. It's manageable within the budget that we have, but with $20-some million in reserve, I just want to kind of put it a milestone here for the board to recognize that this $20-some million that we have in reserve, if we're going to spend $6 million next year, just keep that in mind as we move forward in the next 5 years, as you know, how much money we're going to have left available. I know we have the sewer sale proceeds out there, but this is probably our biggest spending year for next year for the capital projects. some of which are funded through grants, but the majority of it's funded through local dollars. That was my only point. And that concludes our presentation on the budget for this evening. We would ask the board consideration for preliminary approval for November, and then we'll come back to you in December.
Sure. Peter, you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2023 preliminary budget.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And passes.
Thank you.
John, your last preliminary budget approval.
Scott, this is the second month in a row that you've reminded me this is my last one. I love budgeting. You know why I love budgeting? Because in November and December, this is when all the work's done.
That's true. That's right.
I think I've got one more thing to remind you of, but that's next month.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
Two seasons, budget season and audit. So we accountant have only 2 seasons, one budget season and the one audit season. That's it. We don't have 4 seasons.
Okay. And Donna, I guess if you can bring in Maggie, Steve Brown, and John, we're going to be talking a little bit about another part of the Route 30 corridor application for a grant that Maggie McGinn is working on, who is at Delta Consultants. So that's who will be coming in from the Zoom side.
Yeah, and I would suggest, since Maggie's done a yeoman job helping us get through these projects, let her carry the lead on this.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Maggie again, as Steve and John pointed out. Right now, we are in the process of submitting a PennDOT multimodal grant application for kind of what we're calling the phase 1 of actual capital improvements on the Route 30 corridor. The scope of the upcoming PennDOT MTF application, which is due on Monday, is for the intersection of Sproul Road and Route 30. The specific improvements that are going to be included in this grant application is about 1,000 feet of widening along Route 30 towards the approach to Sproul Road, or PA 352. So that they can put in a dedicated eastbound right turning lane off of Route 30 onto Sproul Road. As part of that widening, the project or the grant scope is also going to feature a dedicated bike lane near that turning lane, and then to kind of hit the multimodal criteria and aspects, the project scope is also going to start with the putting in some of the sidewalks and a bike pad or a bus pad for a potential relocated bus shelter or station that was identified in the master plan, as well as some retaining walls and some driveway improvements. The grant, the total scope of this project is estimated to be about $2.3 million. PennDOT requires a 30% match on the requested grant award. So it's a little different than the CFA MTF 30% match requirement. So the grant request is going to be for $1.7 million. And then the required match for the PennDOT application is going to be $531. This intersection, I forgot to note what is the improvements were the top capital priority improvements identified in the master plan. If that puts into perspective the targeted improvements in the location of where they are. And then I think the last thing to add is that this will help lay the foundation for future improvements. the widening that will be done to put in that turning lane will help with the project, whether it's east or west next, because it'll start that process of widening, and then hopefully, knock on wood, if awarded, and we go back in for the raise application, this can be incorporated into the future federal raise grant application and can also count as matched since it will be state dollars.
I have nothing else to add. Steve, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything. Thank you, Maggie.
You're welcome.
Is this intended to cover design, engineering, and construction for $2.3 million for that intersection? The bridge is not going to be widened. This is just Route 30.
This is just Route 30, right. This is in front of the, primarily in front of the shopping center owned by Eda Enterprises as you approach the right turn to go up the hill on 352.
Will it require taking any right-of-way?
Yeah, this is going to need right-of-way. We've already had preliminary, well, we've had a meeting with Eda Enterprises, and they are interested in proceeding. Obviously, we have to go step by step, and the devil is in the details, as they say. But yes, the initial meeting went very well, and we were given the green light to go ahead with it.
And this project, the PennDOT scope does not include the preliminary engineering or final design. However, we do have a pending CFA multimodal grant request, so similar program through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for I think it's about $900,000 and some change. And the entire grant request on that application was all for preliminary engineering and design. So if that grant is awarded, it can go towards some of these preliminary engineering and design costs. And the preliminary engineering and final design for the PennDOT, if just the PennDOT scope, it's about $400,000.
So if we don't get the other $900,000 grant program request, then that is in addition to the $2.3 million?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Which is in addition to the match of $531,000.
Yes, in a generalized sense. It's just not incorporated into the PennDOT grant application because if preliminary engineering does advance, because I do know based on past discussions, we've talked about the preliminary engineering progressing to help with the next federal grant application, it won't be eligible for reimbursement through PennDOT. So any costs incurred prior to a grant award wouldn't be eligible. And it helps with the competitive nature of the application to kind of have some of that underway or to mention in your application that the township will be working through those items while they wait. So.
What's the typical decision time frame for this kind of grant?
It's not a specific time frame. I would say probably late spring, early summer, possibly. Given it's an election season, a lot of the grant announcements I'm anticipating kind of being changed from what we've seen in past years, just as the new administration kind of takes over and gets adjusted and prioritizes their priority items on their agendas.
Thanks, Maggie.
You're welcome.
So, Rich, would you like to make a motion to submit the application?
Yeah, I would like to ask for $2.3 million. Sure. I'll make a motion to authorize submission of the application for the PennDOT Multimodal Transportation Fund Grant for Route 30.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and pass.
Thanks, Maggie.
You're welcome.
John, moving on with the, any more additional information on the Preservation Partnership Program?
Yeah, this one's a
Steve?
little bit different than the item we just talked about. We have been talking about, at a staff level, pre-COVID, of establishing a comfort station at Mill Lane and the trail, Chester County Trail. And so we actually, as Scott mentioned earlier, we met with county commissioners last week, and this was one of the topics of discussion. So we're accelerating those discussions and interest in that project, and we're interested in submitting an application to the county for what's known as a Preservation Partnership Program grant. There's a maximum of $250,000, so if the board's so inclined, we would actually like to move forward with the application. I believe it's due sometime before the end of February. So we have time, but with the holidays, I think it's going to go quicker than anticipated, and we have some work to do that I'll mention in item 3D.
Zach, would you be able to find the actual drawing of what this structure may look like?
I don't know if that's been made available. I have it. I don't know if it's been loaded into the...
Yeah, it's in the package.
It's
Is
in,
it?
it's in
Wow,
the
okay.
package. I don't know if you have access to it, Zach, or not.
This is, what was in the packet, if I understand correctly, is a conceptual design that Gorski provided to us, and it's actually the comfort station that was designed by Gorski for, I think it's Limerick or Royersford. So what we're looking to do, and that kind of jumps into the item on 3D, is to have the board authorize getting a proposal from Gorski for conceptual design for the station. I think the one that Zach is trying to load up is just more of a concept. It really doesn't include what the county's interests are, because it is going to be a county comfort station on their property. So we're just trying to move the ball forward. So, but this was an example of what
What it
was
could
provided
potentially
to
look
us.
like. And this would eliminate the need for folks to come off the trail and come into the township building.
Correct. We have a very heavy use, pre-COVID, we had a very heavy use of the township building for comfort services, and so this would take some of the stress off of our building for that purpose. And with a $250,000 grant available from the county, we're looking to partner with them on this project. So we'll be reporting back to you at the probably December or January meeting with progress on this. We're working with Dave Stauffer, who's the director of Park and Recreation and Open Space for the county, and he's been in conversation with us for a number of years in trying to get this project moved forward. So what we're asking for is just the board's support to apply for the partnership program grant.
The partnership program implies we pay some expenses, the county pays some, even though it's on the county property and a county facility?
Correct.
Okay. Mostly by the county paid for?
We'll see.
Okay.
If it's not cost effective for us to do it, then we may pull the
Right.
plug.
Right. Okay.
Initially, pre-COVID, the county was in support of doing this, but with other priorities that came up, they really need to take another look at it and see if it's still worthwhile to do that.
Yeah, maybe they can find some of the $100 million in CARE money that they got to spend on this. Okay,
Because
good.
we're sure they care.
Yes, we're sure they care.
It's really not unlike the Route 30 situation. PennDOT owns the road, but it's our expenditures that are going to be used to fix it up. Kind of the same thing. with a little bit of help from PennDOT.
And Steve probably can answer, cover this better than I can, but with the American Rescue money, the county has made it a competitive process to have proposals submitted and then considered by the county commissioners at some point to spend their ARPA money. So I have a feeling this is going to be similar to that and the Route 30 project that Scott referenced.
Any questions, Donna, from the public? Peter, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I'd like to make a motion to apply to the Chester County Preservation Partnership Program for a grant for a comfort station at the intersection of Chester County Trail and Mill Lane
For up to 250,000?
for up to 250,000 max.
Do I have a second, Rich?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes.
If I may, the second one's, 3D is related to that. I just want to edit the title on this. It's actually to authorize conceptual design proposal from Gorski for comfort stations at the intersection of the trail and Mill Lane. So we're not spending any money, we're just getting a price for getting this done. And that will take some coordination with the county to see what their specifications will be for the comfort stations.
Okay. Rich, would you like to move that one through?
Sure, make a motion to authorize a conceptual design for the comfort stations at the trail and Mill Lane. Is there a cap on the cost for this, or we'll get that later?
I think it would depend on what the proposal, what the, as the actual design comes in at. So this is just the proposal for what it's gonna cost to do that work, and then we'll have a price estimate of what the number is to actually build it. That's how the design build works with Gorski and Sourcewell.
Right, but there'll be a cost to the design, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I just want to know what the design cost is going to be before we authorize them to do it.
Got it, okay.
Thank you.
Motion made.
I second that.
Aye.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And John, moving forward here on the tax collection.
Yeah, I think Bernadette was going to host this one, but I'll do my best. There was a legislation passed recently to allow for a waiver in certain circumstances of real estate taxes for the 2023 tax year. And so our solicitor is recommending the board approve that resolution to do just that.
Yeah, this is in reference to new homeowners who don't get the tax bill, that they would only have to pay the face of the tax bill, not the additional charges of penalties and interest, if they could prove to the tax collector, yes, I didn't get the new tax bill. Apparently it was an issue, and this is how they're addressing it. You still have to pay the tax, but just the face value. You're not going to be hit with the penalties and interest.
You avoid the penalties. Makes sense. All right, Peter?
I'd like to make a resolution to approve the resolution for the 2022 to 2031 tax collection to waive additional charges for real estate taxes in the event that the taxpayer failed to receive notice of the real estate taxes in 2023 tax year.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. John and Usha, I guess we've got some discussion to talk about the different investment options for our short-term, interim investments.
Zach, if you could tee that. There's an email with, yeah. There's an email with some options, and then, no, not that one, that's one of the exhibits. Yeah, we actually been working on this for a number of months. With the way that the public funds market is with respect to investments, there's been pretty sizable increases in the interest rates, as everybody knows. And so there's opportunities here to make significant more in interest earnings over the next few years, or at least the rest of this year, next year, I should say. So we've been working with Key Bank and with Meridian funds that we hold in our accounts, and looking to make the best use of those dollars. And we are recommending that the board, we have some accounts with the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, and we're looking to expand our accounts with them to get better returns on our funds. So I'm not going to get into all the specifics. I provided an email to the board with a menu of what we're recommending, but basically we're taking a minimum of $1 million and as much as $5 million and putting it out for terms of at least 90 days and no more than 210 days. That's the way that Pliget structures their short-term investments. And then same thing with Meridian, not as many accounts, but also the same parameters. So this will help us get a better return on our funds. They'll also have, the funds will be liquid because we're not going to be keeping too much in long term. And I think that just about covers it. I would ask if the board has any questions on what's been recommended.
You know, in the recommendation itself, I don't have any problems with the allocation. We did just get the, this fund is audited every year, which is critically important. And I just want to, before giving the final go-ahead, I just want to be able to review the audit.
Sure.
That's all.
Absolutely.
You know, a couple days.
Absolutely.
But the allocation, I think, is fine. We do have a significant amount of money with them. We have the sewer money, right? And this would bring it up to around close to $60 million. So,
Correct.
Yeah, I definitely want to just read through the audit. And rates are not going to come down in the next 7 months, I'm sure of that. So it's a good idea to maximize the return. Just want to go through this.
Yeah, this is probably, for most of Pennsylvania, the most common way of investing other than money market rates for municipalities. And if we do get board approval to move forward with this, it's going to take us a number of weeks probably to implement these changes, just because of the way, the timing of the market and things like that.
John, unlike a 6 CD that has a fixed rate, these rates do fluctuate, correct?
Well, once we lock this in, that rate will stay for that term. They're fixed rate for the term. So
The NAV doesn't change then?
the NAV may change, but
Our money
rate
is fixed.
is fixed, yes.
Is Meridian and Key Bank able to participate competitively with
No.
these rates?
No.
Banks can't come close to these rates of, what, 4.5%?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real fund, significant. It had, as of December 31st, 2021, it had over $3 billion in assets. Actually, with the two funds, looks like close to $6 billion. So it's a real fund.
And I would submit that by if you look at the financials that aren't done yet, because the year hasn't ended, I can bet those numbers are going to skyrocket by the end of this year, because they basically have built the better mousetrap.
We will continue to have funding in those other local banks, right, for day-to-day services and
Yes.
activity.
Yeah, we're going to diversify our holdings We had most of it with actually Key, which is out of Buffalo, and then Meridian is a local Philadelphia, Pennsylvania bank.
And as a municipality, we don't pay income taxes on it,
Correct.
right? Which increases the return,
Right,
in theory, right?
right.
Okay, so I don't know if we need to make a motion to table this, Bernadette, or do we just not act on it?
You could just not act on it.
Just not act on
And
it.
then it can show up on the December agenda.
Can we do a contingent on the review by Rich?
Yeah, we can do that, yeah,
Yeah.
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 It won't take a month, yeah. Yeah. Promise.
Right.
I believe you.
Why don't you make a motion?
Okay. Make the motion to approve the recommended investment options for township short-term and intermediate-term investments in Pliget funds.
And a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bernadette, we've got some more exciting stuff for you on stormwater management ordinances.
Yes, and Donna, I think you said a court reporter was? Oh, okay, great. My mic? Yes, I know I was talking without my mic. But I have it on now. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing, because this is not, this is a stormwater ordinance, not a subdivision or zoning ordinance, but we decided to have a court reporter here just in case. There was a lot of discussion, and as I created an exhibit list, and I'm going to mark the following as exhibits. It's B1 is the minutes from the Planning Commission meeting on September 28th. B2 is the email with letters to the daily local news. B3 is the proof of publication, and B4 is the ordinance. And as you can see, the ordinance is large. But one of the major issues, and what we had put in the legal notice, was under section 706 of the ordinance, there's 3 options as to what we can do with stormwater management facilities. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those, but they were outlined in the in what was given to us by Arrow. And option 1 is basically that the township handles the stormwater control and BMP operations and maintenance. There is a fund that can be established that you would obtain money from the developer homeowner for that. The second option is that basically the homeowner would be in charge of doing the maintenance, and the township would do inspections if there were issues, and certain events the township would inform the homeowner, you have to inspect, give us what's going on with your stormwater management facilities. And option 3 is sort of a hybrid of the two, and Arrow had put a little note in indicating that the option 3 basically was, it makes the default party responsible for the stormwater BMPs, the landowner, with the municipality responsible in cases where the municipal engineer determines it should be the municipality. So this is sort of a hybrid option. This option was created with the focus of allowing someone from the municipality to make the decision on a case-by-case basis. This is due to it being advisable that there be someone in charge of making a nuanced determination of whether the stormwater BMPs can be maintained by the landowner. And then Arrow is indicating we can place specific guidelines in this section if requested to spell out when BMP should be maintained by each group, if that would be preferred. We could pass this ordinance and then amend it to indicate what those preferences would be. One of the, I don't know if the gentleman from Arrow who's been explaining is here. Yes, there's, Al had someone from his office. But one of the things we had talked about at one point was maybe the large HOAs could take care of their own, but the small 4-lot subdivision, the township would do. And
Right, where it's the individual lot owners that are, in those instances, the township could do the inspections, but in the larger developments, the HOA would be responsible for doing those developments. And actually online, in Zoom, Alan is on there. Maybe he, if you want, he's our expert in
Yes.
stormwater, so if you want to have him answer any questions, he'd be happy to.
Yeah, I have a question. Regardless of who is in theory in the first place responsible for the inspection and maintenance, the township is still responsible to DEP under the MS4 permit, right?
Correct.
Okay, so it still flows down to us. No
Yes.
fun, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Colin, do you want to speak?
Of course. Hello, everyone. Colin Fox with Air Consulting. I can give a brief synopsis of why this is required, but I think it was explained pretty succinctly of the options that are put before you. There's not one specifically that townships and boroughs are going with. The option one, I will note, is the default. The option one being, or excuse me, the option two is the one that was put forth in the DEP model ordinance. And then option one was the option created by Chester County as giving the townships and boroughs a choice to enact that fund. It is very much true that per the MS4 permit, it is the responsibility of the municipality in the end. However, this having the landowners take care of it typically is seen to stem workloads as they build up. This is an ordinance that's being put in place, and the BMPs that are built in the future will be held to this standard. That is going to be a couple BMPs next year, most likely a couple BMPs after that. So it can snowball in terms of scope.
If we put the responsibility on the landowners, we still have to monitor the landowners doing the inspections. And if they're responsible, do they then have to, in theory, report to us anyway?
Yes, 100%. In option two, there's specific language: a written inspection report shall be created to document each inspection. Inspection reports for the annual and triennial inspection shall be submitted to the township within 30 days. So you should be getting a feed of written reports. Of course, you will have a couple that you will have to hunt down.
How realistic is it for landowners to go ahead and do this? I mean,
it's a very good question.
Realistically?
It's a very good question. BMPs are really a huge issue right now. I can think of one client that I'm working with that they just found a BMP in the woods, and it is a fight to get that HOA to take care of that BMP. So I don't think there's enough data in the current moment to say how much compliance you are going to receive at the current moment. Of course, the point brought up earlier that you can modify this after this point if data shows that a certain path is not working. Being able to mark in your annual MS4 reports that you have an ordinance that is in line with the model ordinance is the objective, I would say.
This is Peter Fixler. My question is, what, I guess, teeth or consequence would the township have against a homeowner for not complying? Do we establish that, or is there a standard out there?
Yes, let me just quick pull that up for you. I'm sorry. Let's see.
And maybe part and parcel to that is county also likely to add a penalty to us?
That is possible. That second question, county less so, that I could foresee. I'm more so thinking, DEP audits typically won't penalize you for matters such as that. An EPA audit, however, could do so. Let's see.
Didn't we already start inspections and have to gather information for our MS4 permit already?
Yes. Yes, you do.
So we're already doing the inspections, even before this ordinance was somebody's brainchild, right?
That is correct. BMPs are typically at this current moment, the goal is always to have at least an inspection a year, just so there's eyes on the BMPs. Let me just pull up the enforcement and penalties. But as I was saying before, BMPs really are a topic that a lot of Pennsylvania is trying to get a grasp of. And I think that is why there is a focus about BMP inspections in this ordinance, in the model DEP ordinance as well. I just found the enforcement section of the draft ordinance updates. Let's see here. During any stage of work of the regulated activity, if the municipal engineer or the designee determines that erosion and sediment controls, permanent BMPs, conveyances, otherwise are not installed or maintained in accordance, the municipality may suspend or revoke any existing permits or other approvals until deficiencies are corrected. If in the event that the municipal engineer or the designee finds that a person has violated a provision of this ordinance or fails to perform the requirements of any permit or approval or of any O&M plan, any O&M agreement approved by the municipality, may order compliance by written notice of the violation to the landowner. Let's see. Failure to comply within the time specified shall also subject such person to penal provisions of this ordinance. All penalties shall be deemed cumulative and not prevent the municipality from pursuing any and all remedies. And I believe there's a monetary figure at the end of this.
A question, I guess, goes down to Bernadette. Would we have teeth to enforce if we were to put it upon the homeowner to
Yes, so
do this?
the way it's also laid out is that you're going to obtain a fund. So if the township's going to own the BMP, then we're going to get money from the developer or the homeowner in order to do these inspections. Even if the homeowner or the developer are going to the HOA is going to keep the BMP, we could still have a fund. If they refuse to inspect, we're going to go out and inspect.
John Neal, from your perspective, what's your thought as far as size and staffing, and how would it impact what you're doing now?
Well, right now, Arrow's doing the inspections for our MS4. This is for any future development going forward. So we don't have any that fall under this ordinance yet. So it's going to be small. I think we still would probably be best to keep it organized and compact, stick with the consultant doing the inspections.
So this ordinance is only prospective, only new developments. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, all right. And we're already handling existing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why don't we just continue with the consultant? It's already being done and it's already being handled.
Yeah.
And that would mean option 3, where we continue with inspections that we're doing unless we change our mind and say to a new developer or development, you do it.
Yeah, option 3 is the hybrid one. It would probably be Arrow who would determine, yes, this is the one that the township should inspect, or no, the HOA can do that. It would be one or the other, but somebody such as Al would determine that. Option 1 is the township's going to do the inspections, whether the HOA owns it or we own it. Option 2 is we're saying to the homeowner, you do it.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Again, as long as don't see any major issues from your standpoint.
So
Okay.
we're looking for option 1, which is the township will inspect. Then there is Al, or I'm sorry, the name of the gentleman on the.
Oh, Colin Fox.
Yeah, the way it's outlined in section 706 is we're to insert for a period of a certain number of years. And there's also an option that the township engineer may request that the landowner or landowner's designee submit an inspection report after the cessation of a 10-year or greater storm event if there's reason to believe that a BMP has sustained damage that impacts its ability to function as designed, and the BMP's failure would result in damage to down gradient properties. So that's an option, Colin, right? We don't have to have that one in there.
That is correct. Point 4 in there is an option. If I could be bold and recommend that it be put in there, just because it is something that you choose to enact, you could put it in there and just never use it. But that is definitely an option before you. And then the period time for the fund, that is also an option. Definitely have to pick a amount of time to do, but 10 or 25 is what was suggested by the county at this point.
And have you seen any, the townships, are they picking the 10 or 25, one or the other more than?
There are a lot of municipalities that are at your stage right now, so they haven't picked quite yet. I've seen a couple that have picked 10, though, I must say.
So there's 3 places we'd have to put the years, and we just need a number in order to finalize the ordinance.
Just to clarify one, sorry.
I'm sorry?
I recommend just 10.
Okay. And Colin, we can use 10 for all 3 places?
That is correct.
Yep. So with that, the ordinance would be finalized for section 706 with the 10 years and the option number 4 that Colin has suggested that we do keep in, but that the township does not have to enforce. And then, Colin, any other highlights that you wanted to, of the ordinance that you wanted to discuss?
Nothing too terrible. One item that a couple of municipalities are pushing back on, however, it is part of the requirements that I do want to bring up, just so everyone's aware of it, is the changes to the allowable non-stormwater discharges to your MS4. Of note, dechlorinated pool water has been removed from that list. So it is DP's direction that no pool water of any kind, dechlorinated or otherwise, be discharged to the stormwater system. Other than that, you have a good understanding so far.
Rich asked, Colin, what are pool owners supposed to do?
No, that is always the question that comes up. DEP's released a couple of documents that don't really give great guidance in that, if I can be so bold. They say that you can infiltrate dechlorinated pool water on your property, ensuring that it does not cross property boundaries. They say that private residents can approach the municipality and ask if it is acceptable to discharge to the sanitary sewer. Not many townships or boroughs are going for that, because you're effectively adding I&I to your system at that point. I foresee pool service, commercial services, pumping pool water out, having a bit of a boom in the next couple of years as people start complying with the requirements. But right now, that's really all DP has said to that matter.
I don't know if the board had any other questions or anyone in the audience had any questions.
So we want option 1, section 4, or option 4?
So under section 706, option 1, and the paragraph number 4 to be included, and to where it had the insert for the number of years, it sounds like you guys have decided on 10 years in each of those 3 places. That would complete the ordinance, and when it's ready to go out, option 2 and 3 would be dropped.
Correct. So I'm going to take that as a
Suggested motion?
as read by Bernadette Kearney. Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Thank
Good.
you.
Very good.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
John Neild, if you can tell us about your latest motion, advertise.
So we are asking for permission to advertise some old equipment that we'd like to sell on municipal bid. There's a list there: generator, old lawnmower, some traffic signal equipment, an old trench compactor, and a welder generator.
You know, I've been looking for a signal head. Can I get a good deal on one?
Absolutely.
Are
I'll
any
get
of
the
these,
municipal bid.
are any of these items the devices that can change the light for you?
No.
All
No,
right.
these are,
Just asking.
yeah, no, these are just old things. The signal cabinets have come from over the years with replacements, and the signal heads were when Great Valley Parkway and Route 29 got replaced.
Okay.
How much do you hope to get for all of this? $1.99?
It's not going to be much. The generators, this is a big generator, it's trailer mounted, but they don't get much money. And old mowers, a couple $1,000.
Yeah, okay.
Signal heads, nothing much.
All right. Peter, want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve to advertise the equipment for sale on municipal bid.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Zach, for planning and development, number 7, for Fetters Mill.
Sure, so this is at last month's meeting, there was a hearing for the conditional use application of the Fetters Mill Community Association to make adjustments to their buffering and landscaping. Board made a motion to approve that. The decision has since been drafted by the solicitor's office. There are a number of conditions in there just in accordance with the discussion. Outside of the usual shall comply with the testimony and things like that, we did be sure to include the requirement for a maintenance plan. So with that, Bernadette, if there's anything you want to add in addition to that, we have all of the other sort of revisions that were discussed during the meeting to the exhibits, the plan, notations for the different subsections. So all of that has been reflected and incorporated by reference in the decision.
And, actually, Denise Yarnoff wanted to pick up Gina Gerber, who was the applicant's counsel, couldn't make it this evening. I believe Denise is here for Knickerbocker. She asked to pick this up. So I'm going to pass this down and ask that we could get a signature. The other thing is we made the revised condition 7 and the revised plan actual attachments to the decision. So in years to come, if anybody's looking for it, these 2 items are going to be attached to the decision. And as Zach indicated, the maintenance plan is also a condition of approval, and I'm assuming we'll be getting that soon.
Yeah, the way it's discussed in that condition is that they have to stake out and flag anything before we move it, stake it before they plant it. So that will be the mechanism for us to get that plan and review it sort of in at that time.
Okay. Any questions, Donna? From Rich?
No, I have no questions.
So Bernadette, we need to make a motion to approve.
Or didn't we decide this last month?
You
or-
did decide it last month, so really this was just the signing of the decision, the written decision. You had made the verbal decision last month.
All right, that worked.
Okay. Should we hand out pens?
I'm sorry.
Should we hand out pens?
All right. Zach, so we've got 7B, considering sending the solicitor to draft a resolution. I think we have a bit of an update on LD 12 2021 and LD 2 2022. Because there are some concerns on one of the waivers, as we read in the pamphlet supplied to us, perhaps a motion to table as we have these concerns, and we can work through maybe some of those and bring this forward to another date. Does that make sense, Bernadette?
Well, and Zach, you could certainly interrupt me. One of the things you could certainly do tonight is discuss the waivers. You don't have to make a decision on the waivers. You also have the right to indicate that you want the solicitor to prepare both an approval and a denial, and you can actually make your determination at the next Board of Supervisors meeting. Or yes, you could table it. I did confirm with Zach, I believe for both 9 and 10 mail, and we have until the end of the year to render a decision.
Yeah, so the applicant did provide an extension. The short background on this, they had been through a number of processes, you know. They had moved forward with preliminary plan presentation to the Planning Commission. Following that meeting, they realized, you know, in some discussion with staff and the consultants that, you know, really they've engineered it to a final engineering standpoint. The conversation was whether they could submit for a combined preliminary final. So that's what's before you tonight, a presentation and discussion of what, you know, the overview of the project, review of the waivers, things like that. So my suggestion would be to hear the presentation, hear about the project, run through the waivers, discuss them, and if there's concerns you have on any specific waivers, let's talk about that tonight so that as we move forward into the next month's meeting, we can either decide whether there's support or not for those waivers, because those will really be the sort of the key to the approval.
I'm sorry, is the engineer here?
Yeah, I believe
okay.
Scott Deischer from JMR Engineering is on the meeting. And so if you'd like, I can sort of turn it over to him to give an overview. I have the plans handy to display.
Rich, you okay?
That'd be helpful.
Peter, you okay?
Sure.
I'm okay with that. Based on that recommendation, Zach.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So would you like to go through 9 or 10 now first? And I just want to say sorry in advance. I don't have either of the plans in front of me. I'm operating off my cell phone right now.
Scott, why don't we start with 9? If you could just kind of give a description. I have the plan, Sandy, So if you'd like me to
Sure.
fill up any specific, just the general overview, I can have that up and kind of, I can follow your lead on just the description.
The applicant is a landscape consultant that is looking to operate his business out of this. They're going to construct a garage and a shed, multiple stormwater facilities on the property. We've gone through conditional use for steep slope disturbance approval. We've also gone through the variance process for multiple variances for setbacks for the building from the residentially zoned parcel to the north of us. We've gone through planning commission, received a recommendation to them for preliminary final approval. And at this point, we have we're working through the NPDS comments with the conservation district.
Can there be a better description of what it is actually that we're looking at up here so everyone can zero in on that? It's
Yeah,
a lot of
sure.
lines on paper at this point.
Yeah, so what we're proposing is to utilize the 10 Mallon site for access. So there'll be an access driveway that's constructed up the center of the property line between 9 and 10 Mallon. That will serve in the future for both 9 and 10 Mallon as access. They're proposing to construct, I forget exactly how large that building is, Zach, if you could zoom in on that. But there's parking facilities and then also parking facilities for trailers and some material storage bins there. There's also a shed. And off to the right there, we're proposing to encompass the 150-foot riparian buffer with a conservation easement.
Yes, I'll just piggyback there. The building itself is an approximately 8,500 square foot flex warehouse building to house that landscaping operation. Scott, if in between responding to questions and things, if you could just mute in between there.
We saw this so many months ago, and we're looking at things that just, I don't know, where can you describe details of what's around that? Where's the Bishop Tube site? Where's Route 30? Where's north? Where's south? We can't see any of that. There's just lines on paper here.
I think at the last.
And we are going back to 2021 when we saw this last, and so it has been quite some time.
Zach, at the Planning Commission, I think you were able to pull up an aerial, weren't you?
Bishop Tube site is directly to the north, and then the railroad tracks are direct to the south of the site. This is located all the way at the end of South Mountain Road. So that's directly to the north of us.
Scott, we're having a little bit of static on our end. If you could just mute in between speaking at least, we can try to minimize that a little bit. Let me just orient everyone quickly to the parcels that we're talking about here. Unfortunately, the lines don't show up very well in the aerial. So, again, a lot more lines, Scott, I apologize. This is Route 30 here at the top of the screen. This is South Malin Road. These are the train tracks. So South Malin comes under the train tracks. This parcel here is the Bishop Tube parcel. To the left on the screen is the Buckeye property. And so just real quickly, this larger, more square parcel is the 9 Malin Road property that we're referring to now. The 10 Malin Road property is this longer, skinnier one. So when I turn on the aerial, just try to, unfortunately it doesn't show up very well, but try to follow the general areas. 9 Malin Road is generally in this location. If you're able to follow my yellow cursor here, and 10 Malin, which is not the one that we're referring to now, is in this general location. So I know that's hard to see. I can flip to a... Sure. So yeah, yeah, it does show up a little bit better. Thank you for that. Again, South Malin Road coming in. These are the existing buildings on 10. The development that's proposed is sort of in this area of the site. And with 9 Malin, they would be sharing an access sort of in this location, and the development would be taking place generally in this area of the site. Again, I know it's hard to see on the screens.
Could you flip back to the rendering?
Sure.
The engineer's rendering?
Mm-hmm. Let me flip to the first page, because it shows the property on a...
Actually, I like that former one you had.
Go back, okay.
Just the black and white one.
Sure.
There's one thing I noticed on the Chesco views and on this is the rectangle at the most southwestern corner of 9 Malin that also kind of matches a structure on the Chesco views. If you could go back to the map there. I was just wondering if the engineer can kind of explain what that is. If you could zoom in a little tighter towards the tracks on the 9, I guess it's, yeah, right there, Zach, you got it.
Yeah, so I believe that's an old well building that we're not proposing to do anything with this time, because that would be more disturbance up in the steep slope area.
What's in that building?
You know, I'm not exactly sure what's in that building.
It's part of the property. And it's a structure, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it is part of our property.
A contaminated site that has a lot of bad things on it.
Well, there's no contamination on this site. All the contamination is to the north.
That's the only thing I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, fair question. That did come up initially in the review. It doesn't appear that there's anything going on in that building. It's just an outdated structure, but...
I guess DEP tested up there, I'm hoping, guessing.
Well, so the Bishop 2 property, obviously not part of this subject application, it is down gradient. As I understand it, and there's people in this room that know the property better than I do, the contamination issues are on that property and in the sort of down gradient downstream areas. I'm not aware of any contamination or any sort of environmental records of note on this property.
Okay. Just a fair question of a pretty toxic site.
Yeah, certainly. It's right next door. I understand that.
If it's an old structure from that site, one could wonder what was going in a satellite shed.
Gotcha. Does the board have any questions specific to the project? Would you like to run through the review letters? How would you like to proceed with any conversation here tonight?
10 Malin Road is one parcel, right? There's already an existing building in there, and you're putting another building to the south, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So there's two existing buildings on 10 Mountain Road. There's the larger building, and then there's also a shed structure up in the top parking lot. That shed structure is going to be removed. And then we're proposing to construct our office and flex space warehouse building up in the woods of that site.
Is there a reason why 10 Malin Road, the new building, is sited so far south? Was there any thought to have it more north?
Yeah, so directly to the north, there's a pipeline there. And then also that's where we have one of our 3 stormwater facilities. So where the site currently sits is kind of its, if we go more to the north, then we would be grading within the pipeline right away. And if we go further south, then we would be grading into more woods and more steep slopes.
Scott, I'm sensing from the board there's some hesitation over the location of the buildings, especially relative to the existing wooded areas. Would you be willing to offer an extension to carry this project forward a little bit longer, let's say into the January meeting, so that we can regroup, sort of reassess where some of these pieces are, get the board a little bit more information in advance of a future meeting?
Sure, that's no problem. And I apologize that I was unable to make it tonight. I feel like that would make things a little easier if I was there in person to explain. But I think, as far as our clients are concerned, that's when we were looking for approval was early in 2023. So with the NPDS permits where they are, I think that they would be okay with that.
Why don't you and I set up a time to review the plans, come up with some materials that would help the board at least understand what's actually being proposed? Is it a hard site to sort of get your bearings on? And then we can provide
if you guys want to sit down, with me and just have a sort of more informal meeting just to discuss the project and talk about the location of the buildings and all the stormwater management that we're doing, I'd be happy to explain everything to you.
Okay. So why don't you and I, we'll follow up later this week. We'll try to figure out some better things to help everyone get oriented. And but just to confirm, you are okay. I just want to make sure this is on the record. Are you open to an extension through at least January at this time?
Yes, that's okay.
And we'll need a written letter from you to extend it to the end of January 2023.
Okay, yeah, I can send that over for both projects tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, guys. Sorry I couldn't be there. I apologize.
Not a problem. I will follow up with you later this week, Scott.
Which Scott? I know, which Scott?
So I know we're tabling this, however, we do have 2 questions from our friends online.
Yes, Donna, why don't you put them on?
Okay, Kate, do you want to go ahead, Kate? Please unmute yourself.
Sure. First, I want to thank you for honoring Larry last meeting. That's all. Just thank you so much for remembering him and honoring him. As to this, when Pete had asked what that building was up on the hill, one of our major concerns is that the DEP is not as involved in all of this as we hope that they could be, from what we know, and I think there's documents swimming around somewhere that the TCEs were dumped up on the hill behind Bishop Tube. I know that the gentleman said that Bishop Tube is not part of this property, but when it was in functioning, that they were dumping things up the hill as well. And with everything that we're doing, and because of the toxicity of the site and the value of Little Valley Creek being an exceptional value creek, and having some more impervious land and runoff, and what we just talked about a minute ago was the stormwater and how important it is, that the storm water drainage is not toxic. There's great concern for that, and we had written a letter to the DEP in April of 2021, which I think you guys got a copy. What I'm going to do is make sure I send you a copy tonight, just asking them to be involved more. And there's more than the 3 spots that they picked to investigate. There is, for the last 7 years, we've been talking about how toxic that site is, and the fact that 10 and 9 Malin Road, Bishop Tube is down gradient of that, and where that all would lead to. So I'm on a little mush right now, but I just wanted to put those things out.
Kathleen, can you just clarify, this is Scott, in terms of, you said the 3 spots, you're talking about the 3 main hot spots on the Bishop Tube main campus, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but there's information around saying there's more than those hot spots, and the DEP has so much that they're looking through now. And my request is, until DEP checks out to see what that building is and what's up on that slope, that nothing is done with that property. And thanks for all you guys do. I know it's a hard job.
Okay, thanks, Kathleen.
Okay, Debbie Mobile, you want to unmute yourself, please?
Okay. Thank you. I may be repeating myself, but I looked over. I'm kind of hearing the same kind of questions over and over again about this site and not getting them answered. So let me just clarify my thoughts for you. I do not understand why this township is considering approving these plans and granting all these subsequent variances. Why do we have rules and regulations on the books if the township has no intention of assuring that they're followed? I have been coming to these meetings on a regular basis for many years, and it seems to me, just my casual observations, that more of these exceptions are approved than not approved. Certainly, any exceptions, particularly when it comes to steep slope, should only be granted in the most dire situations, or if the owner perhaps is suffering a hardship. I do not understand how following the law is a hardship to the current owner. It's not as if they've lived on the property for 30 years and they're in need of a handicap ramp or a family garage. This is a business who should be willing to follow the rules of this township if they want to set up shop here. Furthermore, these laws were on the books before the company made this purchase, so they must have known what they were getting into. The state has put in rules and statutes to assure that runoff problems are continually being abated. Because we live in the Great Valley, stormwater runoff is a major concern for this township. And we spent a good part of the meeting before this talking about it. The runoff from this particular hill and the storm surge from the Little Valley Creek can be intensive. One only needs to remember a little over a year ago when torrential rains caused flooding and damage to Route 30 directly north of these properties. This, too, was a case where a business made changes to the landscape of their property which were contrary to safe environmental practices. However, all those things considered, the overwhelming concern in this master plan and its modifications is still the proximity to the Bishop Tube site. Certainly, any runoff will continue to flow through the highly contaminated property, which contains TCEs, PFAS, heavy metals, and who knows what else. The runoff will continue into the Little Valley Creek and then beyond. And until there is a complete and thorough cleanup of the Bishop Tube site, we cannot evaluate the possible damages that this proposal for the adjacent property might cause. Mayland Road should not be allowed to become a dumping ground because of its industrial base. What happens in this small portion of the township spreads throughout businesses and residences alike. I am not asking you to make any exceptions or any special deviations. What I am asking, or should I say demanding, is that you follow the law. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Deb. Any other comments from the public? Okay. So, in conclusion, we'll end up having this moved to a January hearing. Moving on to the Knickerbocker final subdivision. Zach, I don't know if you want to lead into this.
Yeah, I can give just a little background. I know the applicant is here as well and can probably give a better overview. The board granted preliminary approval at a previous meeting. Sort of concurrent to that, the applicant submitted a final plan and it's been under review by our consultants. This plan was recommended for approval with conditions at the last planning commission meeting. So it's before you, I suppose, tonight for an update, and I'll let the applicant take it from there. I believe they'd be looking for a recommendation for a final approval.
Good evening, members of the board. Zach, good to be here again in front of you. We are here seeking, Denise is behind me, and if I say the words wrong, she's going to correct me. So, the authorization for preparing the resolution for approval. She should have come up here and said this. There hasn't been, since the last time we were in front of you, there has not been any significant change to the plan. What we did was we took the previous review letters, worked through some of the technical details, made a resubmission, received revised review letters, of which we continue to work through some finer technical items. So we're here tonight asking the board to consider authorizing the drafting of a resolution for the final plan, so that way we may be able to proceed.
Do we want to go through any of the highlighted waivers or anything, Zach?
I believe the waivers are consistent with the preliminary plan at this point.
No changes?
No changes, no additional, no new waivers, no new requests.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is obviously there was a number of conditions during the preliminary plan. A lot of them kind of would carry forward through the final plan. We can adjust some of the language of that to kind of reflect status. I think one of the themes that that we've talked about with the applicant the last couple weeks is I would say pending approvals of third-party permits, and that includes sewer review by Aqua, which is a little more out of our control than it used to be, let's say. The NPDS permits, so their erosion control and stormwater, they're still going through their technical comments with the Conservation District and subsequently with DEP. So there are other permits, other approvals that need to take place. If there were to be any changes to the plan, we don't anticipate that at this time, but if there were to be any changes, I think the applicant knows, and we would want it to be reflected in the resolution that depending on the scope of that, it may warrant an amendment to the plan approval. Again, we don't anticipate that, but if there were to be changes that are significant enough to rise to that level, I think Jason, unfortunately, reluctantly knows he may have to come back through, but we don't anticipate that.
That would be subject to the level of the technical review, and it is very commonplace that the NPDS permit occurs after the final approval, and the NPDS permit is a condition upon the actual recording of the plan. So the consultants will have an opportunity to review any NPDS updates to the plan, and if those are reflective of the point at which that there is the need for any type of amendment that's established, then we recognize that, and I think every developer in this case knows that type of risk. So.
Yeah, I just have one general question. There's 4 phases here. Is it typical in a phase development for the escrow to include all of the infrastructure for all phases, even though it's being phased one at a time?
I've seen it done a couple different ways. I've seen it done where all the infrastructure is done as part of phase 1. The escrow's done. I've seen it done where it's sometimes a little easier to do it that way. I've seen it done where each phase has its own escrow, so it could be done. I don't know if the applicant has thought about that or
in regards to the financial security, typically the idea is on a site of this size, you manage through the financial security. So the applicant, we would be responsible for the whole financial security, but it is broken up into pieces. And again, it depends. I mean, right now, I think we all have read headlines that we're now in a different market than we were 6 months ago. So we went from this white hot market, and we're still working through a plan that is going into a bit of an unknown market. So we would look to structure something that's acceptable and reasonable under the financial security agreement.
And just out of curiosity, since Rich brought it up, do you know how long, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, how long are we looking?
I think standing right here, right now, it's really difficult for me to determine.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't feel responsible being able to answer that. I couldn't really say right now.
It's impossible to predict something like that with what's going on in the economy. Yeah, I know.
I think if I gave you an answer, I wouldn't be telling the truth. So.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't knowingly.
I wouldn't know.
You might be telling the truth.
I'd be guessing.
Yeah, and just sort of piggyback on the financial security, that would all be determined prior to the plan being recorded. So we would have all of those construction breakdowns reviewed, approved internally along with the applicant, and at least phase 1 would be posted. I guess the question would be, from a site work standpoint, do you anticipate, and if you don't know the answer to this, it can be determined later, do you anticipate more of the initial site work and site prep and grading being done sort of across the tract or more segmented by phase?
It can be staged depending on what needs to be done in different portions of the site. The way we would approach it is once we have a breakdown of the financial security, we would provide that to the consultants such as Arrow, who would review it and then verify the data, which is typical and standard. And they would weigh in on whether or not the information we provided is correct. So usually that's what we're accustomed to. So prior to recording of the plan, we would submit that information to Arrow for their review. That's fairly standard.
What would be your best, worst guess to a start date
There's a very good potential for a start date, subject to meeting the conditions. You know, it could start in 2023. So the goal would be to start work in 2023. And obviously that's subject to obtaining all of the third parties that are required and tightening up on any loose ends.
Outside agency permits, it's left as NPDES and PennDOT?
There is no HOP PennDOT for this.
There is.
But we do have NPDS permit. We do have our sewer planning module to complete, our Act 537. We have our water quality management permits to do. We have our Part 2 permit to do. We have to work through some final items with Aqua, now that the township does not own the conveyance system. So we have a number of things. There is a lot of work left to do for us.
Yeah. Okay.
And it takes time. And then after all those things are put together, we can then turn around and hand those off back to the consultants to check the box.
Okay. Yeah, any questions? All right, I think, Donna, is there any public comments? There is none. None in the audience. So, Rich, you want to make a motion here?
Sure. I stand corrected, there is somebody now.
We do have some.
Martin, you can unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, good evening. Just a quick question. The video and sound cut out near the end of the prior discussion on Maryland Road 9 and 10. So I'm just curious what was initially discussed on the Knickerbocker issue. The video came back on, I believe, when Zach was talking about third-party review.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall now, but I don't think there was a whole lot that was discussed. Basic background, Martin, as you know, is that the plan was preliminary approval at a previous meeting. The Planning Commission recommended the final plan with conditions, and Jason, I think, gave very brief update on what he's actually requesting, and then we started discussing just one of the themes, aside from any of the comments in the review letter, is that there are a number of third-party permits that need to be worked through. But aside from that, I don't think you actually missed anything on the Knickerbocker.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to authorize the solicitor to draft the resolution for LD 13-2021 for final subdivision land development for Knickerbocker.
You have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we're good.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Zach, moving on to a few more extension of time requests.
Yep, so just one this month. This is for the building addition at 330 Lancaster. It's for the Schuldeis hernia repair. It's sort of a hernia surgery and recovery center. It'll be the first in the States. It's a Canadian company. Anyway, they are doing a land development application for a small building on the back of that to comply with some of the Department of Health requirements for having to have exterior windows and things like that. That's for all the patient rooms. That's what necessitated the building addition. We just received another submission. My guess is that this will go beyond January 31st, but we are working with them to review the plans and move them forward through the process. So you will likely see something in December or January, and we will revisit that shot clock as we move forward.
Okay.
Which building's 330?
It's the large, so if you're facing Clues and Strawbridge,
Yes.
it's the veterinary cancer center,
right,
the
sure.
large glass front building. Yeah.
Yep,
So
got it.
the addition will be sort of to the back left of that.
Got it. Okay, got it. Yep.
Maddie's old
Right,
ruckus fun
right,
hangout.
exactly.
May she rest in peace. And now we have a hernia center. Kind of goes.
Thank goodness we have a hernia center.
Kind of
you're
goes
getting
hand
old.
in, kind of goes hand in hand.
You're getting old. That's all. That's what it is. It's what-
Hey. Peter, you want to make a motion for 7C there?
I would like to make a motion to, sorry, I lost my place there. I'm sorry, to consider extension of time to render decision to LD 08-2022 for the building addition to the Shoulder Hernia Repair Center at 330 Lancaster Avenue to January 31st, 2023.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Extension granted.
Next one is for the release of financial security for the Immaculata Science Pavilion. This is the new building over there on their campus. There was pretty limited site improvements. Everything is complete at this point. They've got a couple of items that they're working through with the codes office, but all of the site work is complete and has been inspected. So they are in a position to have their financial security refunded in the amount of $248,000, $248,897.14.
I feel like that went up pretty fast, that building.
Yeah, they did. Well, they came through for approvals in, I guess, 2020. I think they were one of those ones we approved in late 2020. There was like 9 things on the agenda one night. I think they were one of them. So yeah, they moved pretty quickly.
Where does time go?
We spend most of it in meetings like this, but
Seems like yesterday we approved that.
Rich, you want to make a motion?
Yes. Let's see, I'll motion to approve the final release of the financial security for Immaculata Science Pavilion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
It passes. All right, John.
All
Tee
right.
it up.
Thank you. Under the zoning hearing board in upcoming cases, the first one we have is for 14 East Lancaster Avenue. I believe there's a Dottie Belinsky that's on Zoom. Her associate is here, and I think the property owner's here too, to give you some description of what they're going to do with the property. The application is for them to take what's an existing, the old abandoned roadbed of Lancaster, and turn it into a parking lot for storage of materials for contractors and things like that, rent out the property.
John, when you had come before us months ago, I know there was a laundry list of questions that you had kind of compiled and we had compiled. Do you know if you've got like a conclusion to what this?
They're probably going to go through the list of things. Our concerns had to do with the, when they brought up the original application, they brought up, we're talking about providing screening, security of the property, lighting, what types of storage is going to be there, temporary trailers, piles of materials, large equipment, that kind of stuff. We wanted some kind of idea of what they were going to do there. We asked them to come up with a more exact plan of what their plans are, maybe examples, and that's why we're here at this point.
And Donna, I did see that Dorothy had emailed a PowerPoint, but I'm looking, if I send it, did you get it?
He did, I got it.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
so with that, I guess, Dottie, are you able to see and hear and all that? I see you, but I haven't heard you say anything.
Hi, yes.
Okay.
Hello, good evening, Dottie Belinsky. And I'll start by saying my expectation was to show up live tonight, but I came down with a head cold. So I just wanted to thank your staff. Everyone has been so great about pivoting to do this partly hybrid and let me participate by Zoom with Anthony Federo from my office. We're with Favorite, Trinker, Biddle, and Reed. Is there going to assist if we need any help in the meeting room? as well as Paul Salomon, who is one of the owners of the property, and our engineer, Jason Culp, who is from Guzman Engineering in Malvern. So he's local and very familiar with our site. So if we could go to the first slide, I thought what we would do tonight, because there was some maybe confusion and misinformation on our project, what my plan is to kind of orient us to the site, explain where we are, give you a little bit of background on the applicant and the history of the property, an overview of what we're trying to do, and maybe figure out next steps. We have a zoning board hearing scheduled in the end of this month, right after Thanksgiving, and ultimately we would appreciate if the board of this board of solicitors would support our application, because we think there's a need, but at least not object to our application. So with that sort of introduction, if we could go to the next slide, which is an aerial.
Sure, Dottie, would you mind bearing with me just one moment? I want to make sure this is visible, and I think when I did a screen share, it kind of made it harder to see. So bear with me one moment.
Sure.
I'll make the slides more visible, and you'll be less visible. Hope you don't mind.
That's perfectly fine by me. Thank you.
So Dottie, I have the, I don't know what you're able to see on your screen necessarily, but I have the second slide here, the aerial pulled up.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a couple of slides. This one looks a little blurry, so maybe some of the other ones will be easier to see. But just to give everyone an orientation of where we're talking about, this diagram and most of the pictures and site plans that we have tonight are oriented in the same way, and north is to the top of the page. So east is to the right, and obviously west is to the left. This property is approximately where the red dot is, if you can see that. It is basically a rectangle, although it has a smaller western side than the eastern side. The eastern side is a little bit larger. And it is in the FC zone, which is frontage commercial, but the interesting thing about this particular parcel is that there's very little frontage. It does have a leg out, a drive aisle to Route 30 on the eastern border. So Route 30 in this view here is basically east to west, and the property is approximately parallel to that. And to the south of this property is the train track, and there's a pretty good sized buffer between our property and the actual tracks on the train property side. So if you were looking at Route 30 and looking at the building to the south, all the way to the left-hand side, that is a building that is part of something called Century Plaza. And I have a few pictures of Century Plaza in a bit in the show, the slideshow, which is relevant, not necessarily for the application per se, but it is a property that is owned by the same owner of the subject property for this application. So if we could move to maybe the second aerial, the next slide. This is just, I thought, a better aerial, but it didn't have the same kind of pinpoint to show exactly where our property is. But the subject property is essentially kind of like in the middle of that green space that you can see to the south of Route 30 there. It doesn't have the frontage. There's a separate property owner that is along Route 30 just to the north of us that has the frontage. And I'll just remind this board, you may recall that you've recently approved a project on that property for Catalyst Sign Company, which is getting ready to start their construction project. And again, this site is co-owned by the same owner of Century Plaza. So on the next slide, if we could, please. Thank you. This is a picture of Century Plaza. I would assume that most people on this call and in the room are familiar with the site driving by it on Route 30. And I thought it would be interesting just to understand who the applicant here is tonight. So technically the applicant is 70-72 Lancaster Pike Irrevocable Trust, which is really a fancy estate planning mechanism, but it's owned by Paul and Lisa Salomon, are the ultimate owners. Paul and Lisa Salomon are actually the owners and operators of Century Kitchen Cabinets. And they operate in the Century Plaza facility as well as owning the real estate. So this company was started by Lisa's father. It's second generation, both her parents actually, the Sayas, in the 60s. And they moved to this location. This is one of their locations in Pennsylvania in approximately 1980. So I've personally been to the site many times. Paul's, one of his tasks in running this business is to manage all of the facilities for Century throughout the state in Pennsylvania, and they have a location also in New Jersey. And interestingly enough, Century Kitchens, they manufacture all of their cabinets in Pennsylvania. So everything is made in the U.S. It is a local business, and they've been here for over 40 years. And we'll give you a little bit more information about them as we sort of show you a little bit more on the site. So this is one visual of Century Plaza from Route 30 looking eastbound. And if we could go to the next slide, please. This is just to give you some orientation. This is Century Plaza, looking at it from the opposite direction, looking westbound. And although a lot of people have probably seen Century Plaza from the street, you may have not seen it from the rear. So we come around the building. The kitchen cabinet display facility is actually at the end of this facility, so that's where some of their cabinet displays are. So this is looking at the back of the building. Part of the application is to have commercial contractor truck storage, and we were proposed that the trucks would come in from this side and drive behind this building to get to the vacant lot that is the subject property. Okay, if we could go forward a little bit with the next slide. So the property that is owned by Century, part of the Century lot, actually goes behind their building, and there's another building in front of them. There's a pizza parlor and a former printing shop, but their parcel extends behind that, and this is what it looks like. And this is a good visual for what we intend to do on the other side of the property on the vacant lot with some tweaks. So basically here you have a drive aisle, and to the right there's parking stalls. That's just for basic car parking. But this is a similar design that we want to use as we go a little further to the east behind the buildings. Can we go to the next slide, please? So basically, this is looking backwards. So this is where, this is a picture of if we were standing on the vacant lot looking back towards Century, what the drive aisle in looks like and the parking on that property. Next one, please. This is the property itself. So like the zoning officer just stated, this is actually an abandoned road that was Old Lincoln Highway. And so that what you're seeing there is the original paving, and there is no intention of changing the layout of that. It's approximately 25 feet wide. To the right of it, there has been some underbrush overgrowth. The idea is to remove some of that underbrush on the right-hand side, put in gravel, and permit the work trucks to come in and park in gravel parking spaces. The idea would be, when we first submitted this application, we didn't have an end user. So we are thinking about doing commercial trucks with workers coming in the morning, probably early in the morning, dropping off their personal vehicle and picking up their work truck, going on their jobs, and then coming back and swapping out vehicles in the afternoon. So there is no, there's been some discussion about what we've proposed on lighting. The light posts are actually still there from when the road was in function. And I think if you look hard enough, you can see one all the way on the right-hand side of this picture. They have to be shored up, but they're existing. They're approximately 15 feet tall. We intend to add light fixtures to these posts, shore them up, and also add some security cameras. Again, like I said, the current owners, the Salomons, have been managing this property for a long time. And in the past, some people will come through here and deposit things that didn't belong here, that they haven't managed to take care of. They've obviously paid taxes on it for a long time and insured the property as well, and would like to have it have some utility going forward. There are 5 existing former light posts on the property. You can see a couple in this picture. So we're not bringing in new posts, we're just going to add fixtures to the ones that are there. That's the proposal. And as part of the gravel that we intend to install if this application is approved, no trees would be removed. So the trees that are existing, our entire design works around all the existing trees. And nothing on the left-hand side to the, of this picture to the north is going to be impacted as far as vegetation.
Dorothy, this is Scott
Yes.
Lambert. Do we have any sketch drawings of what you're proposing other than?
We do. I was just going to finish the pictures. I only have a couple left, and then we have a site plan. This is just that roadway from all the way on the western side of the property, looking backwards, sort of in the reverse angle. The next one. These are the types of vehicles that we intend to have as the work vehicles. Commercial parking lots are not a permitted use in the zone as a standalone parking lot. However, because it's the FC zone, there's a lot of other uses that are permitted, such as like automotive repair shops and things like that, where a parking lot adjacent to that use is permitted, but not a standalone parking lot. But I think there was a question about the types of vehicles that we were looking to have on the property, and this is an example of what we were thinking. If you could do the next slide, please. This is a light post that's existing. This is actually on the Century property where I showed you that it was a similar parking lot on the Century side rather than the vacant property. This light post has been out there for some time. This is the exact same lighting fixture that we're proposing using on the vacant property. And it has not been a problem. It's downlit. It's not intended to be incredibly broad. The engineer certainly can give more testimony if you had any questions on the light directional, but we have not had any issue with this. And remember, this property does back up to the trains, and the light would be facing towards Route 30. Okay, one more, and then I think we'll be close to getting to my site plan for you. this is just the very end of the property. It turns here left. That is the accounting office that's across the street. They actually have an easement to have parking on a piece of the property that belongs to the vacant lot on the other side of this gate. And then there's a left-hand door to the property, very small, to have access out to 30. Although this access is available, the intention on our application is to not have the trucks come through this side of the property, but rather through the Century side. Okay, one more, I think. We can skip that one, maybe. That one, perfect. One thing I just wanted to mention, and somebody on the during the meeting mentioned this a little bit earlier, a few things happened over the last few years that brought this application about. One was my client, Paul, who manages all the facilities and works with contractors all the time, knows that there's a need for a place to store these trucks that are sort of not in residential neighborhoods or in unsafe places. And he saw that one of your local Home Depots had a lot of emergency truck storage, but during COVID, they changed their operations and those trucks had to find homes in other places. So that was one thing in the last few years that led him to think that there was definitely a need in the area to have truck storage in a safe but somewhat secluded place. And then this picture, there was some flooding that occurred in the last couple of years up on Route 30. At one point, the prior zoning officer approached us and asked us to sort of rebuild this inlet structure to help maintain some of the water on our property. It really had nothing to do with us, but being good citizens, Paul agreed to do that, and the engineer that is here with us tonight actually worked on this project. And it was a pretty big undertaking that we did with, probably a $25,000 price tag to put this together to help with the drainage along the road. And that was because we were good corporate citizens, have been in the community for a long time, and we were asked to help out, and we did. Maybe one more is my site plan. Okay, this is the worst site plan. Maybe one more. It's hard to see this. This is the actual site plan. I thought we had a better rendering, but it's not great. But so this shows you the lot line. It shows on the western border that it's a little bit more narrow than the eastern border. The dark lines are the property lines. You can see it's roughly a rectangle, but then it has that jut out for access to Route 30. The area that's cross-hatched in red with those lines, and I know it's hard to see on the screen here, but that is the area that we would intend to put some gravel down. The number of trucks that we would propose at the very maximum here would be 50. So the parking that we are looking at is, I believe, 18 feet deep by 12 feet wide. A lot of parking spaces are 9 wide, but because they're going to be work vehicles, we're leaving enough room for these people to get in and out of their trucks with their tools and equipment and whatnot. And then there is a setback that we're proposing that we wouldn't touch at all, which is 9 feet. And you can see there's still some white space on this plan to the south between us and the buffer of the train track lot. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to just mention to you on this. The storage, I know the storage has become a very big discussion topic, I think both with the professional staff and maybe the board. we've eliminated all the storage. The original thinking was we would just have a place for the workers to maybe change their boots and leave some basic stuff in a locker type scenario, and maybe a place for some tools to be locked up on site. But it has turned into such a discussion that we feel we don't even know that we need it because we have not identified a tenant yet. So we've completely eliminated the concept of storage. If down the road we have a need for that, we would certainly come back and have a further application at that time. So one other thing I just wanted to mention was that when we first applied, we didn't have a tenant proposed. We are looking for someone that wants to just have storage on road-ready vehicles that will come and go generally on a daily basis. But since then, given the application of the Catalyst Sign Company on the property just north of us, but south of 30 that you can see in our site plan here, they've approached the property owner. Yes, thank you very much. They've approached the property owner and asked us if we can allow them to use our property for basically what we're applying for in this application, which is a staging area for them to store their vehicles and access their property from our side rather than trying to do that on the busy Route 30. Their information with us is that their project is intending to start shortly after Thanksgiving as well, and that their project will take approximately 6 months. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to come in and see if we could get some feedback from this board and have some idea of whether or not the township is amenable to us working with them and sort of allowing them to do this temporary staging on our property. We would not need to do our site plan to accommodate their request for this interim use. So with that, I have Paul Salomon with me as well as Jason if we have technical questions. But I didn't know how much of this you wanted to do. We're going to have a full engineering presentation at the zoning board later this month. And obviously willing to work with all the staff members to finalize the engineering and any further technical questions and obtain whatever additional approvals we might need.
Dorothy, I think at this point in time, there's probably a million questions. And I know John's been trying for months and months to get answers, and it hasn't happened. And I feel like you got the gun to our head here, trying to make a decision to do something. And I'm just not comfortable with sitting here and asking a million questions at this point in time with you having to get to the zoning hearing board. And so from my standpoint, maybe we can send you or you can put together a list of answers to questions that we have in writing. But at this point in time, I'm kind of suggesting that at this point in time that we make a motion, unless you want to ask a number of questions. Rich, Peter.
I'm not very much supportive of this being kind of sprung upon us at this point in time. There's just too many, as Scott has stated, there's too many open-ended questions that we could be here all night going into this with having this presentation kind of dumped on our lap at the meeting.
Well, I think we did answer some of your questions. We did do a written response, and we thought it would be much easier to show you some visuals of the property and how the two properties interact.
I don't know where the answers, anything written. We don't have anything.
We have zero in our packets here. Any of this information.
There's no information that we're aware of.
Whatever you sent Bernadette and myself is
We did resubmit on September 12th, through the zoning office.
And they're just items that were, they're items that were just re-shown here, pictures of trucks in the parking lot, a sketch, there was an idea of a sketch plan, Mr. Salomon came in and spoke to me, and I told him that these were the questions that we needed to do around that date of September. He came in here in the lobby and met me, and at that time, we got no additional information to answer our questions.
It would be helpful to come back, or to the immediate questions that come to mind: stormwater, the hours, the lighting. You said you're gonna put gravel on where there is grass now. Does that violate the coverage requirements under zoning? Do we even have a list of variances being requested? I thought there was only.
Right now, they're just asking for a use variance.
For a use.
Parking lot there, that's correct.
I don't see how you can handle a use variance without getting into all the other items also under the zoning ordinance. It probably should be a little more comprehensive, which might be able to be done, but just the use itself is probably not. You gotta get into the height of the lights. Are the lights too high now? There's more, probably in more detail, more things you need to look at under zoning.
Can I amend our application to have essentially a type of interim approval to get your support of a use variance on a temporary basis without any further construction, so that we could work with the sign company to allow them to use our site to access their property until we finalize the engineering request they are asking for on the construction project? Because they are trying to start in the very near future.
I guess what,
I don't think there's support for that.
I'm sorry?
I don't think there's support for that.
Okay. And one of the questions I had, when Al, you may be able to answer this one, is even if the gravel is existing today, they're now coming in to ask for, to use it as a commercial parking lot. Do we allow gravel commercial parking lots, or does it have to be macadam? And that's one of the questions, I guess, we're trying to figure out is, and I don't know that it's delineated if there's any spaces. And if you have so many spaces, don't you have to have landscaping between certain number of parking spaces and things like that? Okay.
Yeah, and we have requirements for the number of parking spaces, for the number of employees in a building. Do we have a number of cars that are allowed on a back lot? I don't know what you call that. But the number of cars, the time of usage, fencing, as Rich said, lighting, what type of maintenance is going to be done on these vehicles. I'm sure there's going to be some maintenance. Now we're hearing that there's potentially some type of building for people to change their shoes and boots. It seems to be a hodgepodge. The way there's no there's no unity. I don't know what this is. This is a lot of things kind of all bundled up, being thrown at us at the last minute. And Dorothy, I'm sorry, I just don't feel comfortable with moving forward on anything at this point in time, based on the limited amount of information that we need to make decisions on. And it's certainly going to impact the folks that live just south of you quite a bit.
I don't know that it's insurmountable, but there definitely is more zoning issues relevant and involved with this. And it probably all should be, I don't know if it takes sitting down with zoning to go through item by item. This is what, to do it right, this is what you need to show, or if it zoning or zoning. Right. That would probably be the right way to do it and the most productive and most positive to move it forward.
We can certainly set up a meeting with the applicant to walk through the site plan and try to understand maybe some of the questions that were raised previously. I personally am not, John is sort of the point person on this. He may have received some of this materials, I haven't, but I'm happy to sit down with you and walk through sort of some of the things we've talked about internally that we're trying to wrap our heads around, and sort of, resubmit and, make any sort of adjustments to the site plan.
You probably would end up at the same place time frame wise anyway. If you took this to the zoning hearing board, whether or not we went to support it or oppose it, they're going to have all the same questions. And they're going to ask for all the detail, and they're going to say, what about this, what about that? So you could go there and use up another unproductive 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe try to get all those answers sooner and go once. That's my thought.
Well, we are working on revised engineering plans that we will have in for the zoning staff and board to review. But we wanted to come here because of the urgency, I guess, that we've been approached by the sign company to try and get their vehicles off of Route 30. But if we're not able to do that in time for them, then I guess they'll do what they have to do without us.
It's interesting, when that proposal came through initially, I think Mr. Salomon had offered the property even for construction staging, and I don't think that they thought it was necessary, but I could see having an area off Route 30 could be less impactful on traffic. So that aside, I think probably what does make sense is meet with John and I, let's walk through the plan, make sure that he and I are understanding at the very least what you're looking to do. I think what we'd be looking for is something a little more cohesive, submitted in advance that John and I have a chance to review. It sounds like the board is still interested in weighing in before going to the zoning hearing board. Is that what I'm hearing?
And I think currently you had already authorized the solicitor to go out and oppose. I think that was
Last month.
the date.
I think it was last month.
Yeah.
So I guess a question for the applicant and for Dottie would be, are you open to this, I'll say the staff meeting prior to going to the zoning hearing? Because if so, I think we may need just an extension of time in order to open the hearing. We can work through some of those administrative items, but I just want to make sure that it's on the record that you're open to an extension here tonight.
It may not seem that way, but we're actually trying to help you, believe it or not. We could say nothing and you would go there, and I don't think they would grant you anything yet. So
I think they'll ask you the same questions that we're asking here before they make a decision.
Okay, so we are willing to give them an extension, and we'd be more than happy to sit down and meet with staff and go through the drawings with Jason.
Okay, John and I can set up that meeting, and I think we've heard a couple things here tonight that'll help with that discussion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have no problem with it. No.
I have no problem with that.
No problem.
Zach, I don't know if this next one is you that consider the action on the zoning hearing board decision and orders.
Oh, sure. So I believe John and I have been tag teaming some of this. John is sort of the point person for these. These were some of the decisions that kind of came through, probably actually prior to John being our new zoning officer. I believe he provided these to the board. These were the written decisions for some of the zoning hearing board applications over the summer. This, as you know, this is kind of a new agenda item in case the board wanted to review, take action, what have you, on the decisions once they're made. So previous agenda item before it goes to the zoning hearing board, this agenda item is after it goes to the zoning hearing board. So if you have any questions, if there's any of these that you know, looking for more information on, I think John or I could try to answer those questions. Otherwise, there's no action that's required at this time. It's just an optional check-in, weigh-in, if you like.
I have no questions on any of the opinions.
Right. I had a question. What happened with the Sonesta Suites?
That is the next item on the agenda.
That's the next item? Okay, sorry. Getting ahead of myself. Oh yeah, I guess that is the next item.
Hearing none. So this next item is unique even still from the previous two. This is not a formal application just yet. This is a pending application for a project that we're aware of from meetings with the potential applicant, the new property owner, and their legal counsel for a potential zoning hearing board application, which would be for a use variance and supporting relief to convert the existing Sonesta Suites property, sort of at the corner of 29 and 30, from an extended stay hotel to multifamily apartments. And I believe both the applicant and their legal counsel, Denise Yarnoff, are here. So Denise, I'll turn it over to you. Denise, I'm sorry, I don't think your microphone is picking up. I'm guessing it's probably the microphone and not you. Yeah. I believe Donna's going to get some batteries. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware it wasn't coming through. So not to make anybody sit through.
Could you repeat that?
What?
If you want to just give Donna a moment, I think probably want that to be picked up on the video. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, we should just wait.
Yeah.
I was just about to introduce Jeff to present further, and I'm sure that you'll be able to hear him
I was gonna say, I'm guessing they're not sure either. So Jeff can probably hear me. We were having some technical difficulties.
I can hear you.
Okay.
And
Why don't we change the batteries real quickly? Denise can, to Denise and anybody else, we'll just run back through that quickly so the audience members can hear what's being discussed.
Okay, so is that, yes, that sounds like it's working better. So I won't go through the whole recitation that I just did, but you guys who are on Zoom, I just gave a brief background of where we've been over the last 6 or so months and working with the township staff and the Township Land Development Committee, and in what you're generally proposing for this property. But Jeff, if you can, using the presentation, and Zach will put it up, if you can run through our presentation, and ultimately the purpose, or one of the purposes of our conversation today, is to hear any feedback, thoughts from the board before we actually submit a zoning hearing board application, and to understand what the board's thoughts might be with regard to it. The one other thing I will add as you hear about this, in the course of these discussions that we've had over the past months, one of the questions we were asked in response to a number of questions that we were asked by either the Planning Commission or the staff or the Land Development Committee, there were questions that came up, and we put together a list of conditions that we would be agreeable to should the zoning hearing board find favorably on the application. And they were conditions that specifically address concerns and issues that have been raised through the course of all these other meetings. So Jeff will get to a page about that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. Thank you.
thanks, Denise. We appreciate your time tonight and just an opportunity to be able to share with you some of our thoughts, and like Denise had said, some of the conversations that we previously had, and kind of what our vision is for that Sonesta Suites property. Zach, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll quickly just introduce who we are. My name is Jeff Warren. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for PEG Companies. I have with me also Steve Line, who is a development manager for this project, and Alex Murphy, who's our portfolio manager over all of our extended stay conversion properties. PEG Companies is located in Provo, Utah, in the Salt Lake City area. And so we will be quick because it's only 8 o'clock here, and I understand that, that's a lot better than sitting through this at 10 o'clock at night. But we are a real estate investment firm that is headquartered in Salt Lake City. And what we do and what we focus on is primarily 2 different areas of real estate. One is multifamily housing, and the other area is hospitality. And what we generally and traditionally have done is we are developers of new multifamily housing from the ground up, as well as brand new hospitality, brand new hotels. We have our own in-house management companies for both sides of the company, for the multifamily and also for the hospitality. We currently have operating projects in, I think, 27 states. We have approximately 40 hotels that we're working with, and multifamily properties. We're close to about 5,000 doors that our multifamily property management group handles. You can go on to the next slide, Zach. What we want to talk to you tonight about with regard to the Sonesta Suite is just to explain to you what we generally are doing and what we refer to as extended stay conversions. We started it in 2018 because of our relationship and our experience in both the multifamily sectors of real estate and the hospitality sector of real estate. Working with primarily one of our major licensors, who is Marriott, and started talking about what they wanted to do and some plans that they had for some of their older residence inns. And so what we have been doing is working with Marriott and with other owners of what we lots of times refer to as first generation extended stay hotels, and converting those into multifamily housing. And when we say first generation, you can see the picture there. They are generally properties that we refer to as garden style, which means they have exterior access. They are usually kind of in an 8-plex configuration, several buildings that make up then a small campus that is a first generation Marriott Residence Inn. And what we have found as we've been working with jurisdictions and cities throughout the country is by taking these older properties and converting them to multifamily housing, it really has started to address a housing shortage that there is nationwide, where it can really provide for attainable housing for an average renter that's at market rate. And so that's the one gap that we feel like it really seems to fill in a lot of the municipalities that we're working with. And on the other side of the equation, it takes what is a property that's probably a long ways through its life cycle as a hospitality property, and finds a way to utilize those in a new way. Because what we have found is that as these properties get older and start going through and closer to the end of their life cycle as a hotel property, then they usually get one of two things happen. They're either down flagged or they're deflagged. And down flagging means simply that what was once a Marriott Residence Inn or a similar product that is licensed by Hyatt or Hilton, all of a sudden they're building newer versions of these. And so as a result of that, they don't want to license these as Marriott's or Hilton's or Hyatt's. And so they get down flagged to a lesser known brand. Sometimes then after it gets down flagged to a lesser known brand, it may get to a point to where it is deflagged completely and it's kind of just a hometown run hospitality extended stay property. And so you can see on the right that we've had a lot of experience working with these types of properties. We have about 7 or 8 of them that are currently in operation in different states. And then we have several that are in various stages of entitlements or conversion at this time, and that includes the property that we're talking about here. On the next slide, we'll just give you a quick shot overview of that property that is located in the township. It is currently 120 units, sits on a little less than 9 acres in that condo development that is located just off of Highway 30 there. And if you go to the next slide, Zach, what we are proposing for this property is that the current 120 unit Nest suites would then be converted into 50 studio apartments and 72 bedroom apartments. So we would take what is there existing right now and just keep that same footprint, those same floor plans basically, and then convert those over to studio apartments and 2 bedroom apartments. Residence inns are generally built as residential living spaces. They all have full kitchens, a living room, and then they look like a small apartment. The properties will be operated and managed by our in-house group, PEG Property Group, which is managing similar projects throughout the country. And one thing that we'll talk about in just a minute, but that our management allows us to do is allowing it for us to bring in tenants that are undergoing things like background checks, credit checks. We have minimum 1-year leases. And we'll talk in just a minute about why we feel like that is important and a positive thing as these types of properties go through their life cycle. Zach, you can go to the next one. So this just gives you an idea of the planned renovations that we look at for this property and other properties that are similar to it. You know, on the exterior, for the most part, we're going through and we're refreshing landscaping and repainting and repairing siding, updating signage, fixing, lighting in the parking lot, resurfacing parking lots, doing any repairs to walkways, stairs, those types of things. The other thing that we do is we repurpose what is referred to in an extended stay hotel as a gatehouse into a clubhouse. And the gatehouse is the building where you would go and you would check in, and many times there is our meeting rooms that are in that building. There's a gym many times located in that building, and it's usually the entrance to the swimming pool, those types of things. So it's already set up kind of like a clubhouse, but we go in and we repurpose it so it truly looks and acts like a clubhouse for a multifamily project. We would go in and we add a new fitness center or expand the fitness center, a sport court that is located at the property. Many times we will repurpose that into a dog park for the benefit of the residents. We have things like mail and package delivery and clean, renovate, maybe resurface the pool area. And then inside, we go through and you can see some of the pictures of the things that we do there by adding stainless steel appliances, new flooring, updating the lighting, repainting, adding washers and dryers to many of the units. And if you go to the next slide, you can get some ideas of some of the before and afters on some of the projects in extended stay hotels very similar to what we are looking at in this Sonesta suite. You can see on the left kind of what they look like with the kitchen area, the bathroom area, exterior bedroom, and on the right where we've gone in and updated appliances, countertops, flooring, new cabinet faces. You can see where we've done in this particular one in the bathroom a all-in-one washer-dryer unit so that they have their own in-house laundry facility, and some of the changes that we made to the exteriors. Go ahead and go to the next one. And so as we've worked with a lot of different municipalities throughout the country, it really has become apparent as we've worked with them and as we've talked to boards similar to yours, what some of the benefits are to the community and to the neighborhood. And one of them is it really does minimize the risk of the property becoming vacant or being down flagged and becoming a less desirable property. It also, invites private capital investment into the property as far as fixing it up and adding additional amenities, refreshed exteriors and landscaping. In this particular property, the access is from non-residential streets. We think that that's definitely a plus. And it also provides housing choices for low to moderate income persons. Another thing that we felt and that we found in a lot of these situations, and I think it's true in this particular location as well, is we have seen that after the fact that it really does have some impacts on local traffic as far as limiting local traffic. Because a lot of these, because they were extended stay hotels or were built for business purposes in many situations, are located close to many places where our residents work. We have a lot of residents who work and are able to walk to work, which I'll show you in just a moment, some of the examples of that. But as you know, this property is very closely located very close to the Vanguard, and those are some of the types of people that we would see. And I think the other community benefit is it enhances the tenants and the guests that are living there, because we do require minimum 1-year leases. We've got the background and credit checks, and there's full-time on-site management. Going to the next one, we like to explain to you, based on our experience, who it is that we see is living in these types of projects of ours throughout the country. Our typical renter profile is usually earning between 60 and 120% of the area median income. we're finding that they're generally working class, younger white collar workers, many times earlier in their career. They're mostly younger, usually in their 30s, mostly single. If it's a 2-bedroom, then many times they may have a roommate. And I think that what the real draw is because they're a little smaller, and because of the conversion and the savings that we can have, the tenants are provided better apartments with better finishes and amenity packages for the money than they may get elsewhere. And if you look below there, that gives you kind of an idea of what our demographic is for some of our locations. And as you can see down at the bottom, the average number of occupants in our existing locations is about 1.5 occupants per project, per development. And that's understanding, like in this one, this is 50 studios and 72 bedrooms. And these are all very similar, where we're looking at about somewhere between 1.25 and 1.5 occupants per unit. There's a couple of exceptions where maybe they're closer to 30% or above 25% as far as those that are married. But for the most part, we're finding that they're single individuals. You can see what the median income is there and what the average age. And then we also list for each of those locations, some of the places that we're seeing that these tenants are working. You might look at Obvious Sanctuary, for instance. It's located in Austin, and you can see where a lot of the tenants are working. Avia Maple is located in Buffalo. So that just gives you kind of an idea of where some of these tenants are working. If you want to go to the next slide, Zach, as far as, we get asked a lot, what's the anticipated rent here? And so we show you what, based on the current market conditions, we feel the anticipated rents are for the studios and the 2-bedroom apartments. The proposed rent as of right now is at about 23% of the Philadelphia MSA median household income. And if you look at what suggestions are by the government and by many industry experts, many times are saying, you shouldn't be spending more than 30 to 35%, of your household income on your housing. And so this kind of is at a little lower rate there and allows for a good housing solutions for many younger and those that are in the workforce, especially younger white-collar professionals. And then if you'll go to the next slide, Denise had mentioned that based on a lot of the conversations that we've had with different boards and different groups in the township and with staff, we had come up with, and they had asked us to, many of them had asked us to look at some of the conditions that we'd be willing to abide by if we were able to get approval of the things that we were asking for here. And as we started looking at them, a lot of them weren't difficult things for us because most of them were things that we already do. But we'll walk through this real quick so you can get a better idea of some of the things that we're looking to do and that we're willing to do with this property and that we end up doing with most of our properties. We don't do any agency leases that then the agency turns around and leases to individuals who are receiving benefits from that agency. All of our leases are directly with the tenants. All of our leases are market rate. We don't go through any subsidies or any other agencies that provide those types of living subsidies to individuals. So it's all truly market rate housing. We generally have 24-hour surveillance of the exterior and certain areas on the common areas. Like we mentioned before, the property is going to be professionally managed by our own in-house property management group, PEG Property Group. Provides on-site full-time management of the property, as well as a number for maintenance will be done by the same group, or at least managed by the same group, and providing for full-time maintenance and emergency maintenance of the property. 5 and 6, I think, kind of go together, and there's some reasons why we feel that those are important. 5 is that our leases are going to be 1 year or more. Those will be our minimum leases. And in addition to that, the tenants will have to comply and be approved through our property group rental criteria, which includes verifying employment and income, meeting income and age requirements, minimum credit requirements, criminal record requirements, those types of things. And the reason those two things are important is when you're talking about extended stay hotels, especially as they get later in their life cycle, what we found and what many cities and municipalities have found is they end up being a little bit of magnets for individuals who would not be able to comply with number 5 and number 6. They can go to an extended stay hotel, they can check in, they don't have to have any kind of background check or an employment check. They don't have to pay a security department a deposit. They don't have to sign a lease of any kind. And as a result of that, we are finding then that they end up many times being a magnet for less desirable activity. The number of police calls generally go up. And what we do is through our management and the conversion, we take that and are able to resolve a lot of those issues as opposed to it just staying as an extended stay and going later into its life cycle. And then I think the last one is, of course, we're agreeing to go ahead and repair the sidewalks and pavement and landscaping and provide signage in accordance with the ordinances. Repair and replace exterior surfaces of the building that are in disrepair. All of those types of things, like we showed in a couple of those pictures, where we just go in and do those things that make it look like a very attractive, updated and refreshed property. For the most part, that is our presentation and the things that we are seeking on this, and we're definitely happy to answer any other questions. And then I know Denise has some comments on it, but again, we do appreciate the time that you've given us. But I will just say, kind of in closing on my part, that we've looked at a lot of these, and we're in the process of doing a lot of these conversions throughout the country. And in almost every situation, we have found that the municipalities that we have worked with have been very pleased with the conversion and what the transition of this property brings to their communities. And we have lots of police departments and law enforcement agencies that are also very happy with it, because as they've stayed at extended stay hotels, they have found themselves having an increased number of calls, domestic violence issues, drug issues, those types of things, because you don't have a lot of protections for people that can just check in and then use it as a permanent residence. And those are things that we feel like that we can protect against, in addition to just making sure that we have a very well-kept facility. So, Denise, or open to any questions that you have.
Hi, this is Peter Fixler. I have a question. Have you been in touch with the school district about your proposal?
We haven't talked directly to the school district at this point. We've looked at that issue, and since they have so many other properties, they have their own experience with the number of children that might be coming from this property. And Jeff may be able to talk a little bit more about that, but as you could see, it's a younger clientele. They're typically without children, and typically one person, average looked like about 1.4 in each particular unit. But Jeff, I don't know if you have anything extra you want to add to that.
That is what we're finding in our other properties as well. I mean, the square footage of them are, is much smaller. It just really isn't very conducive to having children. It doesn't have playground facilities or those types of things. And in talking to our property management group, you can count the number of school-aged children on one hand, on average for these properties that are of similar size that we have. So it's just not something that we've seen, and just, really hasn't been anything that's been an impact on the schools in any of those markets.
I mean, there is a possibility there will be some children there.
There, as he said,
so one of the reasons was to find potential increase in children. The other was this is a difficult site to get in and out of. and in no way, shape, or form is near any residence, and therefore I don't see how a school bus is going to have an easy ingress or egress out of this site, and I was just wondering how you guys were considering that in respect to even if it's 2 children, they're
Right,
still
the
going to have
bus
to get
still
picked
needs to
up by a
get
bus.
Right, we can absolutely talk with them about that particular.
The only thing I wanted to add on that, we reached out to the school district previously just for some student counts on apartments and hotels. And they had said that they don't currently have any students coming from the extended stay, but that they did service it in the past. So there's at least a potential there. Certainly something needs to be worked out, don't get me wrong, but they did say that they've serviced it in the past.
Okay, maybe you can give me the name of the person you.
Yep, absolutely.
Go ahead, Rich.
If it's not converted to apartments, it would continue as a suites hotel operation?
I'll let Jeff respond to that too.
All right.
I can respond to that too, Jeff. I'm Alex, one of Jeff's co-partners. From an operational perspective, there's about a year left on the existing franchise with the Sonesta hotels. This hotel overall has had a lot of difficulties over the past year and a half. I think at the beginning of COVID, a lot of the staff was laid off, and this was all with the prior ownership group. And those that remained have had to work double shifts, et cetera, et cetera. So soon after we took over the hotel, the general manager left for another position. His name was Paul Jensen. He'd been at the property for 30 years. Started back when it was the Summerfield Suites. He worked the front desk there. And his challenge was he absolutely loved the property, but he's been unable to hire anyone to work at the property for almost a year now. And so him and his team are just constantly working double shifts. We've been able to bring in some traveling help to help at the hotel. But just because of kind of the high demographics in this area, it's been really hard to hire people that would typically work in a hotel, especially in an extended stay. And so, there's about a year left, I guess, to answer your question on the franchise agreement there. But from a hardship perspective, it would probably be turning into some sort of motel thereafter. Still looking at options if this wasn't an available route.
On page 5 of the handout, there are 2 floor plans. Are both of those 2-bedroom floor plans, it looks like? Can you tell me? I think. They look like enough rooms. There are 2 bathrooms, so there's got to be 2 bedrooms, I would think.
Yeah, that's correct on that one. The 1-bedroom, there's a 1-bedroom layout. There's the 1-bedroom has 1 bathroom. The 2-bedroom has 2 bathrooms.
Okay. All right. And you have camera surveillance on the outside. There would be 24/7 an on-site manager.
Yeah, we'll have on-site managers on all of our properties as well as maintenance teams. For property this size, we probably have 2 individuals on the maintenance side as well as 2 individuals on the operation side. So between leasing and just kind of running the property, but they would be available 24/7. They will be on site, typically from 8 in the morning till 6 to 7 at night.
From 8 in the morning till 6 at night, and then from 6 at night back till overnight 8 in the morning. They live there?
No.
Okay. So
they just live locally in the area. Is who we usually hire, and so it would be someone in here that would be available for emergencies. We have to have 24-hour emergency situations on all our properties.
Emergency access, but there's not someone sitting in an office overnight.
No. Correct.
Right. Okay.
That's right. And I've been around to a few of them. I went toward at least 10 multifamily complexes in the area now, and none of them have overnight. They all close around. They're usually between 8 and 10 in the morning. They open and close at 6.
Chris or Greg, would you like to weigh in on any thoughts?
I was just wondering what exactly do the 1 and 2 bedroom, do they have a max amount of people that can live in each one?
They do. So our leases, limit, are limited to 2 people per bedroom. I'm trying to remember, Denise, I mean, I think that we looked at, what the city required, but our leasing and contractual restrictions, I believe, are even less than what the, city would allow for the square footage. But it's only 2 people per bedroom. So the studios, you'd have a maximum of 2 people. The 2 bedrooms, you could have up to 4 people living in one. But you've seen from the demographics that we have shown on our other properties, for the most part, it's usually 1 person per bedroom.
So if you have a couple living in a studio, there's no children in that one?
Correct.
Okay. But you could ultimately have, in a 2 bedroom, you could have 3 children and 1 adult?
You could.
Okay. Is there anything, do we have anything here that?
The building code would require minimum bedroom size for 2 people.
We would obviously have.
On your conditions, number 5, residents of the property shall be subject to residential leases, minimum 1 year, except in limited extenuating circumstances. What would you consider limited extenuating circumstances?
That's a good question. And that may be, that someone comes in and, they know that they're there for a shorter term, and, in those situations, we may allow somebody to enter into, a 9-month lease or something if they met all of the other criteria, or letting someone out of a lease early because of, some things that had happened. So there are those circumstances that would come in, but for the most part, we always just have a 1 year minimum, and it's very rare that we do anything shorter than that.
From a zoning standpoint, if this was to go to zoning and ask for a use variance, what's to prevent well, I know there's not 20 hotels, but it feels like there's 20 other hotels in this township. If they all come in and say they got a use variance, we have the same grounds. How do we distinguish, and how do we justify that? Isn't that a hard thing with this?
Well, with variances and before the zoning hearing board, and I'm sure Burns, I can say this too, there's not precedent set by one particular case on another case. Each case stands on its own circumstances and facts. I mean, certainly someone could say that, but they'd still have to meet the criteria and prove whatever else needs to be proven and agree to whatever conditions are going to make the zoning hearing board comfortable.
I might also add something on there that could help. What we've seen, and one of the reasons why we initially liked this hotel when the owners approached us about it, it was designed by a guy named Jack DeBoer, who designed all of Marriott's Residence Inns. He started the Summerfield Suites brand, but his whole philosophy was, hey, I can build apartments, but I can make more money by renting them out for short periods of time rather than doing year-long leases. And so that kind of started the extended stay hotel brand. But kind of like you were saying with the floor plans, you're looking at, 600 to 800 square foot rooms, whereas anything that Marriott builds now, and we work a lot with Marriott, who build their own hotels, is sub 300, maybe 350 square feet. So you're less than half the size, and it's just not a place where someone could live comfortably. You would be living on top of yourself. So I think that was one thing that really distinguishes this hotel from, I think, any other hotel when I was in the area looking around. Most of them are newer products that are in similar situations with 300 square foot hotel rooms that don't have kitchens in them, that don't have the pools and the living spaces like this does. And so I think that's one big positive for this community versus others is that they garden style, essentially an apartment. If you look at the picture, it looks like an apartment, you wouldn't even know. Whereas when you go to a standard hotel, and the reason Marriott does that is because you can't operate the old hotels efficiently. They've learned that, hey, we've got to have interior corridors and we've got to have smaller square footages to be able to clean them. There's a lot of reasons, but I think that definitely helps the case of this property in particular being conducive to a multifamily.
The building footprints would stay the way they are now.
Correct.
No additions to the buildings are intended.
The amenities would be the existing pool, the tennis court or pickleball courts, and a fitness center.
Currently, yes, that's what it is. We may convert the court to a dog park if that made sense, but yeah, there wouldn't be otherwise any change to the amenities.
In the clubhouse, we will be adding like a pool table, lounge area with some TVs, as well as some remote working spaces where people can come in and take meetings or calls if they needed to. But I don't know if that was the kind of amenities you were asking about.
Yeah, that's fine. Does the property line of this complex extend over to Route 29? There's a mainline diagnostic imaging, and there's quite a lot of trees, green area. Does the property include any of that green area and the trees? Any idea?
I think Zach's
This property is a unit within a condominium.
Oh.
And so I think that
Slide 4, slide 4 shows the entire condominium property. The units that we have are comprised of just the hotel portion itself, and then the rest of the parking areas and those types of things then are common areas adjacent to the units. So if you look out closer to Moore Hall, where that property is, that is not one of our units, although that is within the condominium itself.
Is that common area accessible by your, whatever you want to call them, tenants or?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Is there a trail through there? Any idea? Yet?
There's a sidewalk that continues through there, and the driveway wraps around, so yes, there is.
So you also control, is it you guys who control that pad out on Lancaster Avenue that's been sitting there for 100 years?
We do not own the pad. That pad is owned by another unit owner within the condominium. So the pad itself, which has not been built on, we do not own.
Okay.
Are there any restrictions to the number of cars that a unit can have or a tenant can have?
in the lease itself?
Yeah, in the lease. And,
Jeff,
and,
do you
and
do that?
sort of monitored, you know?
Do you require a certain number of cars per lease, and then do you monitor that?
It actually depends on the property. We do have some where the parking is more limited, and we do monitor and have specific requirements in the lease, and the parking is permitted. So there may be just one or two or however many per apartment unit. On this one, I think, Denise, if I remember correctly, we're still waiting for the final, numbers and configuration from the parking people to come back on that. If it was necessary on this one, it is something that we have done in other projects.
we've used parking passes and restricted the number of parking passes they can get by the number of units. So if it was a studio, you could only have one parking pass, or if it was a 2-bedroom, you could have 2, and then any leftover spaces were first come, first served basis. But I think this one we were actually meeting the parking requirements. That I don't know. Jeff said the final numbers were coming back, but what it looked like when we were observing it and did our own calculations, it looked like we were going to meet the parking requirements.
Yeah, we're actually still studying that, because the township requirements are different than what would normally be required for this type of unit size and number of units. So we're looking at the total amount of parking, the parking that might be available as part of common elements, as part of the condo, and whether there's any ability to clean up the parking lot and restripe it in a better way. So we'll know that, but it's possible if we don't meet the exact requirement of the township ordinance that if we do go to the zoning hearing board, we may ask for some very minimal relief from the zoning hearing board on parking. But we should have that shortly.
Yeah. It does look like it might be tight for apartments, but do your research. This is the first time I'm seeing it other than hearing about it. My initial reaction when I heard about it was, why would we do this? There are pluses and minuses to just about everything we look at these days because there's not much left. And there are definite pluses to this. It's an upgrade. The existing, call them clientele, would be an upgrade from what I'm hearing. It's good amenities. It's walkable right over to Wegmans, to Target, to the new barbecue place. It's convenient. It's right off of 202 and 29, so it doesn't look like it would clog the roads. It's a reasonable size, 120 versus some applications we're getting, or it's up to 400 units, which is a different animal, but small is good. So there are pluses and minuses. I would just think about it more from my standpoint, but I don't know that I'd be, against something like this if a lot of the questions are answered. But I don't know how best to do it though, zoning wise, change the zoning or a use variance. Either way, even that approach, those approaches have pluses and minuses. So we'd have to look at this carefully. It's a good thing now we know that the franchise will be there for another year and we have time. Just kidding. Just so you know that I do listen. I do listen.
Yeah, going off of what Rich said, it certainly does have pluses and minuses. I'd be curious to hear, again, what the school district thinks, and a lot of, to answer a lot of Rich's questions as well.
One of the things I was just going to suggest to piggyback on that is we have a staff plan review where we meet police, public works, sort of every one of the departments gets together and reviews the plans and kind of comes up with questions, ideas, things like that. I think sort of to kind of like carry on some of these conversations, some of the conditions that have already been suggested, it might be good to get that group together to kind of, look at the proposal, look at the conditions, see if there's any other questions that we might have, and then we can provide sort of get a list going and kind of get that conversation going now that we have some. And I didn't mean to jump in front of you, Scott, but just to kind of now that we've got some feedback from the board.
Yeah, I guess to wrap it up, you gentlemen, I've been in the Wednesday meeting, so you've heard me previously, but I think to give you a final opinion, I'd be leaning more towards going in this direction than the existing direction that it is right now. I've had the opportunity to have some direct conversations with the chief about some of the issues that he's seeing elsewhere in the current Sonesta setup in the township, and it's not favorable, and it's not getting any better. And it's certainly putting our officers in a harm's way in many situations with a lot of different calls. And I think the one thing that I do like about this is exactly what Rich and Peter are saying in terms of it's an upgrade. You've got certain dollar standards that have to be met to be a tenant. You've got a 1-year lease, so you've got less transient individuals coming and going. I think you've got a limited number of people that should be staying in these units. So, but, you know, I guess we'll keep looking at it and researching it and finding out some more information, but generally I feel favorable. If I've got a choice between the existing situation or, I think this is certainly an upgrade.
It'd be helpful to put that group together. Yeah.
So perhaps we could have, is that a meeting you would like us to attend, or is that a meeting that you are thinking alone?
Yeah, generally just an internal meeting. Maybe we try to get that set up sooner than later so we can, you know, if we get a big long list, let's come in and talk about it. If it's not a big long list, maybe we just try to keep it an internal meeting and go from there. So why don't we start by setting up something internal?
I mean, they've all been very good questions, and we've been asked a lot of those types of questions over the last 6 months or so, and we try to address them through the conditions, but obviously that's the list we've put together, so we can continue to refine that, and we could add to it to the extent that there are other issues that do come up. And yes, a year is still a year, but a year goes by fast in the world of townships, so
sometimes not fast enough.
I can't disagree with that one. But Zach, if we could get that, if you guys could have that meeting, you know, sooner, and then let us hear what you have to say, and then we can get something put together for the board. I mean, if you decide that you think changing the zoning makes more sense, in some respects it does, but if not, we're prepared to go forward to the zoning hearing board.
That's my last question. Do you guys have a preference based on, you know the township, you know the zoning here? First choice, zoning change, second choice, use variance, or vice versa, or you don't really know yet?
I mean, a zoning change, if it can be done within a finite period of time, is probably the more appropriate way to handle it. But a variance request, if the township board is not interested in making a change, is, you know, an adequate alternative. But of course, it's a use variance, and that does make it a little more complicated. But I do think that we have very good justifications and explanations for why we'd be requesting that.
And Denise, just to add one more point, and this is not meant to be pressuring at all, the hotel is on track to lose about $1.3 million over the next year. It's at about a $450,000 loss so far since we bought it in April. So any speed is appreciated, but no pressure.
Understood.
I'll be in touch with Zach, and if you have questions or if it would be helpful for us to be on the phone, just let us know. We're happy to do whatever will move it forward, and we can come back to another one of these meetings in a month or so, and then get ready to file whichever way we're going to do it. Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. At this point in time, I'll open up to any public comments out there.
So we actually do have one person that's been holding on to ask a question.
Wow.
Yeah, Barbara, go ahead, unmute yourself, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hi, Barbara Arnold, 31 Fosstock Road. I will make this quick, it's been a long night for everybody. I know the public comment is for items not specifically listed on the agenda, but right after Deb Mobile spoke about Malin Road, our link got cut off, and by the time it came back on, you guys were well into Knickerbocker. So would you just give me 30 seconds to make a quick additional comment to that?
Yeah, go ahead, Barbara. Yeah, take your time.
Thank you so much. So I just wanted to say, both of those 9 and 10 Malin Road parcels are upgraded in a Bishop Tube. So developing them is certain to impact the Bishop Tube site and further contaminate Little Valley Creek. I'd like to suggest that you ask DEP for further and broader testing of these parcels. Kate Stauffer and a couple other people sent DEP a letter a while ago about the toxic implications of these sites neighboring Bishop Tube and asking DEP to intervene. So if you don't mind, I will forward a copy of that letter to you just for your reference. So that's all I wanted to say, and I just want to thank you for postponing a decision on that until you have more definitive information. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Moving on to the consent agenda, I guess as normal. I'll read them in unity, and then if there's any specific questions, stop and ask, and then we'll vote in aggregate. Under 10A, we are looking to approve the meeting minutes from October 12th, 18, and 25 of this year. Ratify the payments of the bills for October of 2022 in the amount of $1,093, and I'm sorry, $1,009,000.
It's getting late.
Yeah, I know, really. $1,093,767.29. Yay. Accept the treasurer's report as of September 30th, 2022. Approve the Backton Hill Park retaining wall cost of $40,450, which is a reduction from when we initially talked. Approve the Backton Hill Rip Wrap E&S control repair cost. This is to solve an erosion problem onto the CVT, and the cost is $53,730. And F, approve payment number 8 to Mecca Constructors in the amount of $115,559.10 for to-date total payments in the amount of $1,349,834 for a projected contract amount of $1,495,023. Any questions? Do I have a motion for approval?
Make a motion to approve the November 2022 consent agenda.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other items? Then we have a, well, we got another 15 minutes. It's almost tomorrow.
Almost tomorrow.
Meeting
That's
adjourned.
nice. He said it's almost tomorrow.